Chapter 1855. Li Xianwei stood in the void, his sleeves and long hair fluttering in the wind, looking cool and elegant. Lin Sun looked at him in a daze, his emotions fluctuating. He could understand the appearance of Guyupu, but Li Xuanwei's appearance was completely beyond his expectation. "Junior brother, I may not be able to answer your doubts, but I can tell you everything I know." Li Xianwei smiled and pointed to his head. "You can probably see that I'm just a force of will. My head is not very good." Lin Sun shook his head with a wry smile. "I've probably guessed some of the reasons. These are all related to the 3,000 ups and downs, right?" Li Xianwei raised his thumb and praised. "Junior brother, you're right. The 3,000 ups and downs is a treasure left by Master. It's incomparably marvelous. Although it's severely damaged, it can escort you out safely. I think it's not a difficult thing." Lin Sun looked at the horsetail whisk in his hand and asked after a moment of silence, "Senior brother, is it because the Tao karma I obtained this time is unusual that I was targeted?" Li Xian smiled and said, "Yes, a long time ago, Master left this on the pilgrimage platform. Over the countless years, any martial emperor with a bit of insight would more or less be able to see some clues. It's only natural for them to make some plans for it." Lin Sun gasped. For a Tao karma, they had planned and waited for countless years. Then just how extraordinary was this Tao karma, to be able to make those Emperor Realm existences care so much about it? This suddenly reminded Lin Sun of the time in the mulberry forest, when Calamity Emperor left a chance to become an emperor, but it made golden cicada, white cicada, thousand feather sword flower and other terrifying old monsters wait in the mulberry forest for a long time. Such a comparison also made Lin Sun more aware of the preciousness of the crescent and 3 stars on his right palm. "Junior brother, let's go. I'll send you off again," Li Xianwei said and strode forward, his clothes fluttering in the wind. Lin Sun's figure was enveloped by a shapeless force, and he flashed towards the depths of the universe with Li Xianwei at an unbelievable speed. "Junior brother, I was transformed from a chaotic green lotus planted by Master. After I gained intelligence, I have been following Master to cultivate. In terms of talent, I am not as good as many of my senior brothers and junior brothers. In terms of foundation, I am also not as good as many of my senior brothers and junior brothers. The only thing I can show off is that I was born with a bright sword heart." On the way, Li Xianwei said casually, "Unfortunately, this is only a strand of my will brand. Otherwise, I would be able to let junior brother appraise the Green Lotus Abode world technique that I've figured out myself." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Senior brother, I don't lack methods now. 9th senior brother just taught me his yellow court scripture not long ago." Li Xuanwei's eyes lit up. "That's 9th senior brother's trump card. It's to temper the 5 organs and condense the 5 virtues Tao body. The higher one's cultivation, the more terrifying the combat strength they can display. Back then, when we were discussing the Tao together, everyone had a lively conversation. Only 9th senior brother was slow in speech and didn't say a word. But when we really fought, 9th senior brother was completely domineering. He summoned his 5 Dharmakaya and killed all his senior brothers and junior brothers. Ha!" In the end, Li Xianwei couldn't help laughing. Come to think of it, this memory left a deep impression on him, and he couldn't forget it until now. Lin Sun felt a little sour in his heart. 9th senior brother had passed away a long time ago. He took a deep breath and changed the topic. "I heard from the spirit of the Great Way Lawless Bell that you once went to the ancient Desolation territory and cultivated in the Azure Parasol Mountain?" Li Xianwei nodded, indeed. "Where are you now, senior brother?" asked Lin Sun. Li Xianwei was stunned and said helplessly, "Who knows? This wisp of willpower has been sealed in the 3,000 ups and downs a long time ago. If I'm on the starry sky ancient path, I can sense the existence of my original body in an instant, but I can't in this godforsaken place." Lin Sun was surprised. However, junior brother, if you reach the Starry Sky Ancient Road, you can make a trip to the Xuanji Dao sect. Their founder, Bo Yazi, was an honorary disciple that I casually took in back then. If he is still alive, he might be able to find out where my original body is. Lin Sun was shocked and stunned. Xuanji Taoist sect? Wasn't that the sect where Ji Qian and Jiang Heng were? If that was the case, wouldn't their sect's founding master have to call him martial uncle? What made Lin Sun feel most incredible was that the founder of Xuanji Taoist sect was just a registered disciple accepted casually by his senior brother, a registered disciple. Not a true disciple. Lin Sun's expression became strange. He had a strong hunch that his guess should be correct. On the Starry Sky Ancient Path, it was absolutely impossible for the existence of any sect to repeat their names. In that case, it would be tantamount to a battle of orthodoxy. Who could bear it? There was bound to be conflict and killing. Oh, someone else is coming. Suddenly, Li Xian said with a smile. Before his voice died away, a snow-white giant lion rushed out of the distant universe. It was incomparably handsome and surrounded by a holy aura. On the snow-white giant lion sat a figure of Buddha. A round light shadow appeared behind his head, reflecting the strange phenomenon of flowers falling from the sky and the light of Buddha. As soon as it appeared, the dark and empty universe suddenly became bright and dazzling, full of solemn and tranquil Zen. Bursts of Sanskrit resounded like the sound of nature. There was no doubt that this was a Buddha who had reached the Emperor realm. In the eyes of Buddhist practitioners, he could be called an indestructible bodhisattva with infinite light. If it was before, Lin Sun's mind would have been shocked by the solemn Zen sound, but now it was different. Because Li Xian was here. Monk, you know more about fate than I do. Let me give you a piece of advice: repent and be saved. Li Xian spoke in a clear voice. His clothes fluttered and flowed with green chaotic qi, and the momentum around him suddenly changed. He was like a green lotus that held up the turbid heaven and earth. In the struggle for the great Tao, persistent pursuit will lead to the other side. Fellow Taoist, if you're willing to discuss the Tao, this poor monk can talk with you. On the giant white lion, the Buddha put his palms together. He was neither sad nor happy nor angry. Ha ha ha, who doesn't know that all Buddhist practitioners are eloquent? To be able to persuade a demon to convert to Buddhism, your eloquence is extraordinary. Li Xian laughed. Since you're unwilling to retreat, then don't blame me for being rude. Boom. He casually pressed his palm out. The Buddha chanted, and his body seemed to be made of golden liquid, releasing the sound of dragons and tigers. Sanskrit appeared in his internal organs, limbs, and bones. He was like a bodhisattva that had descended to the world, extremely sacred. Whoosh! Tens of thousands of golden lights gathered in the Buddha's palm. Layers of treasure light flowed from his body, and he made a palm gesture with one hand facing the sky. Li Xian smiled teasingly. The palm he struck out suddenly turned crystalline like a piece of green jade glass. It was imprinted with the power of the Tao patterns of order. This time, Lin Sun was not disturbed, so he clearly saw a shocking scene at this moment. Boom! Li Xian's palm was blocked 3 feet above the Buddha's head, and then it collapsed. The Buddha's figure remained motionless from beginning to end. Did he block it? Just as this thought came to Lin Sun's mind, a trace of bitterness suddenly appeared on the solemn face of the Buddha, as if he had encountered an obstacle when he was trying to comprehend the Buddha's Buddhist teachings. A wisp of willpower can have such great power. How can I not turn back? With a sigh, Lin Sun saw that there were traces of cracks on the Buddha's golden body, like a spider web, and soon spread all over the body. Finally, there was a bang. The whole figure of the Buddha, like a broken vase, turned into pieces. In the end, even the giant white lion under his crotch wailed. Its hair withered, its bones and skin cracked inch by inch, and blood splashed everywhere. It turned out that this Buddha didn't block Li Xian's palm. Under the spread of the palm force, his golden Buddha body had already been shattered. Lin Sun couldn't help but take a breath. Before, when Li Xian blocked the young Taoist's sword, he was inexplicably shocked. But when he saw Li Xian take the initiative to attack, he knew that Li Xian's combat power was so fierce. "Thank you." Li Xian cupped his hands. In the distance, the golden Buddha light gathered and turned into the figure of the Buddha. He put his palms together, bowed his head, and chanted the name of Buddha. "Donor, there are many people ahead. I'm afraid you can't protect this boy alone." After saying that, he turned around and left. At this time, Lin Sun noticed that the figure of Li Xian suddenly became blurred and illusory at this moment. Obviously, this wisp of willpower couldn't hold on for long. However, Li Xian didn't seem to care at all. Instead, he laughed happily and said, "This monk is not reconciled to his defeat, but let's wait and see." From beginning to end, he was unrestrained, leisurely, and carefree. That kind of demeanor made Lin Sun yearn for it. Li Xian said, "Junior brother, there's not much time. Lend me the 3,000 ups and downs and the Tower of Endless Tao." Lin Sun took them out without hesitation. With the two treasures in hand, Li Xian added a touch of confidence between his eyebrows. He said, "Junior brother, have you ever seen the demeanor of Master in those days? He sat on the 9th heaven cloud cattail, with a horsetail whisk in one hand and a pagoda in the other. Tut, that's the demeanor of a real master." Saying that, without waiting for Lin Sun's reply, he strode away with Lin Sun. Time flew. After the time it took to burn a stick of incense, in the depths of the originally empty universe, specks of bright starlight suddenly appeared, and they flickered without end and were faintly visible. Lin Sun was refreshed. When he walked before, there was only emptiness everywhere. It was oppressive and gray, making people unable to feel the existence of space and distance. But now it was different. At the same time, Li Xian stopped. A pair of sword-like eyebrows wrinkled, which was rarely seen. He murmured, "Junior brother, we're in a bit of trouble this time." Who would have thought that a teaching event would make 3 old guys of the Emperor realm join hands together? How shameless they are! They're obviously going to bully us. Chapter 1856. As soon as Li Xianwei finished speaking, 3 figures appeared in the distant universe. One was an old man with white hair and a youthful complexion. He stood on auspicious clouds and had a Tao diagram above his head. His entire body was covered in profound light. The other was a beautiful woman in a crimson robe. Divine flames surged in her eyes. Her slender body was surrounded by pythons formed from the laws of lightning. The last one was a white-haired man in a black robe. 9 Tao swords appeared behind him. The sword shadows flickered and created scenes of destruction. 3 martial emperors. No matter who it is, no one can take away this good fortune. The old man smiled and said, "Even the inheritors of Fangtsuan Mountain won't be able to." His voice wasn't loud, but it resounded in the universe and caused the void to crack and explode. "You're wrong. Fangtsuan Mountain collapsed during the Martial Emperor's battle. The Crescent and 3 Stars Mountain steel was destroyed. There's no more Fangtsuan Mountain in this world. There's only a group of wandering ghosts." A beautiful woman in a crimson robe with lightning pythons coiled around her said coldly, "So, what we have to do now is to kill 1 or 2 wandering ghosts." The white-haired man in black had a mocking expression. Li Xianwei counted with her fingers and said with a smile, "The first one to jump out, the Void Murder Demon Emperor, was beaten by my senior brother with a horsetail whisk. He fled with heavy injuries and was in a panic like a stray dog. Jade Hollowchild, who was the second to jump out, was quite sensible. After I blocked his sword, he retreated. The third one to jump out, Kuan-Jiao, was quite miserable. His nirvana golden body was destroyed by me with a slap. Only his soul was left and he fled." Li Xianwei glanced at the 3 in the distance and smiled even more happily. "Now I want to ask, which ending do the 3 of you want?" These words caused the faces of those 3 old geezers, who were capable of shaking the starry sky, to turn gloomy. Li Xianwei continued, "So what if they're wandering ghosts? If I, Li Xianwei, was here, would you really have the guts to stand out?" Her voice carried undisguised disdain, and was extremely domineering. The expressions of the 3 antiques who had lived for countless years grew even more unsightly. They naturally knew of Li Xianwei, the 13th successor of Mount Innerheart. However, on the starry sky ancient path, Li Xianwei had another more famous Taoist name, Green Firmament Sword Emperor. On the path of the Sword Tao, he had been known as an emperor for countless years. He was a legendary figure who was praised by many Emperor Realm experts as the path of the Sword Emperor is only mysterious and boundless. If Li Xuanwei's true body was here, they would know that they wouldn't have the confidence to make such a grand appearance. Most importantly, the current Li Xianwei was nothing more than a strand of will brand. Moreover, his strength had been greatly consumed. Li Xianwei, your true body vanished on the ancient path in the starry sky a long time ago after the Tao battles, and it hasn't appeared until now. Many old fellows have deduced that you, Li Xianwei, have suffered calamity and perished a long time ago. The old man on the auspicious cloud sneered. So what if my true body is still alive? There is no place for the remnants of Mount Fangsuan on the ancient path of the stars. The crimson-robed beauty sneered. Hearing this, Lin Sun's heart was in turmoil. After the Tao battles of the emperors, Mount Fangsuan collapsed and its orthodoxy was destroyed? Or after the Tao battles of the emperors, there was no place for the remaining successors of Mount Fangsuan on the ancient path of the stars? What happened to Mount Fangsuan during the Tao battles of the emperors? At this moment Li Xianwei laughed. Junior brother, do you know why they are talking so much nonsense? Without waiting for Lin Sun to answer, Li Xianwei said word by word, because they are also worried and afraid. Even if I am just a strand of willpower, they still dare not act rashly. His voice was powerful and full of mockery. The faces of the 3 Emperor Realm experts were as gloomy as water. Lin Sun also laughed. Senior brother is right. I thought these Emperor Realm experts were amazing, but it turns out that they are just a bunch of weaklings. Li Xuanwei's smile became more and more cheerful. He patted Lin Sun's shoulder and said, Junior brother, don't listen to their nonsense. Our Mount Fangsuan is indeed destroyed, but there are other secrets. Of course, I can tell you that the enemies of our Mount Fangsuan are not these trash. Our Mount Fangsuan will not be defeated by enemies like these trash. The 3 Emperor Realm experts' faces darkened when they heard the word trash. Lin Sun, however, felt indescribably happy. Good scolding. At the same time, Li Xuanwei's voice sounded in his ears. Junior brother, I will send you away later. Remember, if you go to the ancient path of the stars to cultivate, don't walk with the identity of a disciple of Mount Fangsuan until you become an emperor. As soon as he finished speaking, Lin Sun felt his shoulder being patted. He looked up and saw Li Xianwei looking at him with a smile. Lin Sun's heart trembled. But before he could say anything, his body was suddenly enveloped by a supreme force and rushed into the distance. Li Xianwei, don't you dare! Do it! A furious roar resounded in the field, surging like thunder. But no matter how hard Lin Sun tried, he could not see anything. His vision was filled with scenes of stars moving. It was as if he was drifting in the tide of time and space. Junior brother, you have to remember that this old man is Dark War Emperor, that vicious woman is Red Fire Thunder Emperor, and that white-haired boy is Jiuzhen Sword Emperor. All of them are famous trash on the ancient path of the stars. In a trance, Li Xuanwei's heroic laughter resounded in Lin Sun's heart. If I see my real body one day, I will tell him the names of these trash. If I don't destroy their mountain gate and kill all their disciples, I am not Li Xianwei. Lin Sun's heart was boiling with excitement and worry as he listened to Li Xuanwei's words. He was excited because Li Xianwei was fearless and peerless. He was worried because Li Xuanwei's words obviously meant that this wisp of his willpower was very likely to disappear. "Junior brother, take it." Suddenly, Li Xuanwei's voice exploded in Lin Sun's heart again. Then, the 3,000 ups and downs and the Tower of Endless Way appeared in front of Lin Sun. At this point, Li Xuanwei's voice did not ring out again. In the following period of time, there was only silence. Only the strange and dazzling scenes in his field of vision were constantly changing. Lin Sun's heart surged with a strong sense of loss, and there was also an indescribable anger. The inheritance of the crescent moon and 3 stars was actually targeted by so many old monsters. Every one of them regarded him as a fish on the chopping block. This feeling was extremely aggrieving. On the other hand, the collapse of the willpower of Gu Yupu and Li Xianwei made Lin Sun feel complete pain and hatred. "Senior brother, I will not only remember them, but also the Demon Emperor Yushuzi and Buddha Kunjiu. None of them can escape." Lin Sun's eyes turned red as he clenched his fists. He knew that if it weren't for his 2 senior brothers who risked their lives to help him, he wouldn't have been able to leave the Kunlun ruins alive. What made Lin Sun feel the most bitter was that he had originally prepared a trump card to help Li Xianwei at the critical moment. Who would have thought that Li Xianwei would suddenly make a move and send him away, leaving him no time to react? Boom! After an unknown period of time, accompanied by a roar, Lin Sun saw stars, and his body fell uncontrollably like a meteorite. In the end, he smashed into a hard ground with a bang, creating a huge pit, and smoke and dust filled the air. Swoosh! In the next moment, Lin Sun rushed out of the pit. Apart from being a little embarrassed, he was unharmed. His eyes were like lightning as he glanced around vigilantly. However, after a moment, he was stunned. What the hell was this place? Chapter 1857. The mountains and rivers were barren, the ravines crisscrossed, and the dust was all over the sky. There was no grass or vitality here. Only the raging wind whistled like a sharp knife, making a whining sound like the crying of ghosts and gods. Lin Sun spread his spiritual awareness, and after a while, a haze appeared between his eyebrows. There was not only no vitality here, but also no power of the Great Way, which couldn't be sensed. The world was covered with the power of the Great Way, which could produce mysterious forces such as spiritual qi, primordial qi, chaotic qi, and so on needed for cultivation. It was like water in a river, and practitioners were like fish in the water. Without water, how could they talk about cultivation? Whoosh! Lin Sun rose into the sky, reaching thousands of feet, tens of thousands of feet. Soon, he came to the top of the sky, stood in the void and looked down. Only then did he notice that the place where he stood just now was a star. However, this star looked extremely desolate and dim. Where is this? Lin Sun's expression was uncertain. If he was in a world, there would be world order and rules of Zhou. But here, he couldn't feel the breath of the world at all. Whoosh! Lin Sun continued to fly higher and higher. Gradually, he saw many stars in his field of vision. Some were bright and resplendent, some were dim and dull, some converged into nebulae, and some turned into rivers of stars above the starry sky. Lin Sun was stunned. What he saw in front of him was undoubtedly extremely magnificent and magnificent. The stars were uneven, and the vast and boundless scenery was fascinating. But after a long time, it inevitably gave people a sense of loneliness and confusion, as if they were lost in it, not knowing the way back or the way ahead. Not long after, Lin Sun came to a bright star and flew into it. He spread his spiritual awareness and explored for a long time. Lin Sun frowned more and more. There was still no vitality and the Great Way here. Lin Sun didn't believe it. In the next time, he flashed through the starry sky and appeared on the surface of one star after another. He searched for a long time, but in the end, he found nothing. It seemed that this vast starry sky was abandoned by the Great Way, and there was no vitality at all. and Lin Sun was like a prisoner exiled in it. How could this be? Several hours later, Lin Sun stood in the starry sky with a gloomy look. Without vitality and the power of the Great Path, it meant that he would not be able to find any power to cultivate. As time passed, the consequences would be extremely severe. Just like how the people of the mortal world were bound to starve to death if they didn't have food, cultivators were bound to gradually weaken if they didn't have the vitality and energy of the Grand Tao to provide for their cultivation until they died. Oh right. Suddenly, Lin Sun stretched out his hand and turned it over, and a bronze instrument with a simple shape emerged. It was shaped like a lamp, and its surface was covered in dense and obscure markings of the Grand Tao. At the center of the wick was a pointer that seemed like a dragon or snake. Heavenly Cycle Thousand Traps Attraction. It was a treasure he obtained from the heaven accessing place. When one was lost in the boundless sea of stars, trapped in the maze of heaven and earth, or stumbled into great danger, one could use this treasure to find a way out. As Lin Sun activated the treasure, the dragon snake-like pointer glowed and rotated with a buzzing sound. Finally, the brilliance was restrained and the pointer was fixed in one direction. The haze between Lin Sun's eyebrows was swept away. It was feasible. In the next moment, he took action. He utilized the Universe Thousand Secrets guide to fly through the starry sky and flash towards the distance. Time passed little by little. The pointer of the Universe Thousand Secrets guide would occasionally change direction, and Lin Sun would adjust his flying direction accordingly. In the vast starry sky, he was flying alone. He didn't encounter any danger along the way, but the omnipresent loneliness and silence were depressing. 3 days later, Lin Sun had no choice but to stop. His physical strength had been consumed to the point of being on the verge of drying up if he continued to fly above the starry sky. Whoosh! A moment later, Lin Sun appeared on a star. He took out some divine medicine and began to meditate cross-legged to restore his physical strength. There was utterly no vitality or the aura of the Great Way in this vast starry sky. Fortunately, Lin Sun had stored a large amount of divine herbs and spiritual objects, and it was sufficient for him to not worry about replenishing his strength for a very long time. But there was a sense of crisis in Lin Sun's heart. He had been flying for several days, but he still hadn't found a way out. If it was too long, no matter how many treasures he had, they were destined to be completely consumed one day. I must save my physical strength in the next period of time. I can't waste any more. However, it's not appropriate to only save. I must think of a safe way, Lin Sun pondered while meditating. There's no vitality and the power of the Grand Tao. It's like being abandoned by the heavens. I've never experienced such an experience before. For me, it's an unprecedented opportunity to temper myself. I've already attained enlightenment and become a sage, and the next step is the Saint King realm. If I'm able to break through under such a situation that's like a hopeless situation, then the transformation I undergo is bound to be extraordinary. Thinking of this, Lin Sun suddenly thought of something. There's no aura of the Grand Tao here. If I break through, will it cause the Saint King tribulation? This damned place is interesting. In the end, Lin Sun smiled. Unconsciously, his state of mind had changed quietly. Previously, he regarded this starry sky as a cage. It was barren, without vitality, and even the Grand Tao didn't exist. It was oppressive as if he was exiled in it, and he was eager to jump out of the cage. But now, he discovered that this place, which seemed to be a hopeless situation, was actually a rare place to train. If he could survive such a desperate situation, would there be any desperate situation he couldn't survive in the future? Moreover, cultivating in it could also experience insights that he had never experienced before. This kind of experience was destined to have an immeasurable beneficial effect on his cultivation. After half an hour, Lin Sun took action again. In the starry sky, his figure was completely relaxed. He precisely controlled every inch of his strength with his huge spiritual awareness to save the physical strength consumed when flying. At the same time, he was meditating on the great way yellow quartz scripture to temper the spirits of the 5 internal organs in his body. Whether it was a desperate situation or not, as long as the state of mind was the same, everywhere was a good place for cultivation. This time, Lin Sun's physical strength was on the verge of being exhausted after 5 days of flying. Compared with the last time, it was equivalent to holding on for 2 days longer with the same strength. Not bad, there's progress. As long as I use my strength accurately, I'll be able to hold on for a longer time in the future. Lin Sun had a kind of enlightenment in his heart. The great sage was great and immeasurable. Of course, the power possessed by him was amazing. However, if one were to blindly seek for power without being able to fully and perfectly utilize this power, it would undoubtedly be a waste. In the past, I could fight against a group of enemies by relying on the solid and powerful foundation and path of Tao, but I didn't run my strength to the extreme. Realizing this, Lin Sun felt as if a layer of shackles had been broken in his heart, and the enlightenment gushed out like a spring. A butcher can dismember an ox effortlessly. What it relies on is a deep understanding of things and the way to utilize one's own strength. When one's skill is in line with the way, it is the most perfect use of one's strength. This kind of use of strength can not only be used for flying but also in fighting. At that time, maybe one's strength can defeat 10 masters and one law can break all laws. This enlightenment lasted for several days before Lin Sun woke up from meditation. He looked up at the starry sky with deep and bright eyes. "Let's go." Lin Sun set off again. This time, it took him a full 10 days before he ran out of energy. This is the magic of the use of strength. Standing in the starry sky, Lin Sun sighed with emotion. From this day on, he completely emptied himself and no longer stuck to looking for a way to survive. He traveled alone in the starry sky, cultivating and comprehending all the time. Occasionally, when he was sleepy and tired, he would meditate to recover. Walking was like Zen, sitting was like Zen. Wandering in the starry sky, Tao enlightenment was natural. Understanding the truth in his heart, he knocked on the Tao in a desperate situation. Half a year later, Lin Sun drifted forward in the void of the starry sky like a feather. His mind was on the edge of sleep and his soul was clear. In his 5 viscera, there was a thunderous roar, and the charm of 5 colors, 5 elements and 5 virtues was flowing and enshrouding him. He was in a trance like chaos, like a real embryo of Tao. This situation lasted for a full 3 months. Boom! On this day, Lin Sun's body suddenly trembled and he straightened his back. At this instant, the vital energy that he'd accumulated in his body for a long time had been completely released. His internal organs suddenly charged out from within his body like 5 strands of divine radiance that were green, crimson, black, yellow, and white, and they condensed into numerous halos that seemed like they were embryos in midair. As they inhaled and exhaled, they created a miraculous rhythm that seemed like life. 5 viscera magical embryos. The great way of the Golden Quartz scripture was divided into 4 realms, namely 5 accumulation realm, 5 colors realm, 5 flavors realm, and 5 virtues realm. At the beginning, Lin Sun easily entered the 5 accumulation realm with his cultivation of the Great Sage realm and accumulated wisps of Taoist palace in the 5 viscera. These Taoist palace spirits were like illusory images, extremely vague, showing 5 kinds of divine halos of green, red, yellow, white, and black. Now, as Lin Sun condensed the 5 viscera magical embryos, his understanding of the great way of the Golden Quartz scripture had broken through a new realm and reached the 5 colors realm. In this realm, the 5 true spirits in the 5 viscera would condense and take on their own forms. For example, the verdant wood true spirit would take on the form of everlasting vitality. At this time, The 5 spirits in the 5 viscera would reflect 5 completely different colors. When they reached the 5 flavors realm, the 5 spirits would break out of the shell in the 5 viscera magical embryos and have their own flavors, just like each person exuding their own charm. In the 5 virtues realm, they would have their own spiritual awareness and Taoism. At this point, the 5 viscera magical embryos could be tempered and turned into 5 Dharmakaya. Each of them was not weaker than the original and had their own magical powers and mysteries. Chapter 1858. Soon, the divine light released from Lin Sun's body receded like a tide. He stood in the void, his black hair fluttering, and his black eyes as bright as stars. It had been nearly 9 months since he entered this desolate starry sky. After experiencing and tempering, Lin Sun finally confirmed one thing. Even in a desperate situation, as long as his state of mind remained the same, it was a rare and precious practice. During this period of time, he had gained a lot. First of all, his control of his own power had reached the peak, just like a butcher dismembering an ox, which was in line with Tao. Then, he tempered the 5 organs of the divine fetus, and his cultivation of the great way of the yellow court scripture reached the 5 colors level, so that his cultivation also broke through to the extreme of the great sage realm. Only one barrier was needed to be broken, and then he could be crowned king in the great sage realm. What a pity! Before long, Lin Sun let out a long sigh. Because up to now, the magic medicines and rare treasures stored in his body to replenish his strength were on the verge of exhaustion. Lin Sun couldn't help feeling surprised that he couldn't find a way out of this starry sky after 9 months. The shortage of materials made his mood a lot heavier. I can only seal a part of my chi for the time being. Lin Sun made a decision. In just a few breaths, the aura around him suddenly changed. It dropped from the great sage perfection stage to the true sage initial stage. At the same time, he concealed his spirit and chi, using his body as a boat and his spirit as a oar, and using the 1,000 secrets guide of the universe to guide the way. He flew through the starry sky. In this way, Lin Sun sealed his own power and used it all for flying. Time flew by in the quiet and cold starry sky. Lin Sun was immersed in comprehending his own method. Due to the shortage of materials, Lin Sun was destined to be unable to practice, so comprehending the method became the only thing he could do. Another 6 months passed in a hurry. Lin Sun successfully integrated all the mysteries of the Great Way of the Void-Breaking Finger into the Great Way Furnace scripture, so that this method created by himself transformed again and gained a magical effect of space. The process of smelting the method was like a blank ancient book, in which Lin Sun constantly wrote words, leaving pages and pages. The Great Tao Furnace scripture was one such scripture. The more techniques that were refined, the more profound the mysteries contained within would be, and the more powerful it would be. But in the past 6 months, all the materials Lin Sun carried to replenish his strength were exhausted. During this entire process, he tried to search for vitality and resources that could be utilized on various stars, yet he returned empty-handed in the end. This part of the starry sky was simply a land of death. Lin tried to contact Wu Kei, the spirit of insignificance Bao, but found that the latter had already fallen into a deep silence and could not wake up in a short time. Whoosh! A jade hairpin appeared in Lin Sun's palm. It was simple and unadorned. It was made of a mysterious pure black jade with the word "She" engraved on it. This was the name of the mysterious woman in the heaven accessing place. If he encountered a life or death crisis, he only needed to activate the jade hairpin, and the mysterious woman would come out of the heaven accessing place. After a long silence, Lin put away the jade hairpin again. It's not a matter of life and death, so why bother she? I'd like to see if this ordeal can trap me in the end. Lin Sun took a deep breath, got rid of distractions, and became calmer and firmer. The edge between life and death was the greatest terror, but it was obvious that this was not the time to truly be on the brink of life and death. Lin Sun was not a strong man. He knew very well that external force was also a part of his own strength. He could do whatever he wanted, but he couldn't go beyond the rules. Especially when it came to his own cultivation, he couldn't easily use external force. Otherwise, it would only make his cultivation flawed. Half a year later, Lin Sun completely sealed the cultivation of spirit refining and body refining, and only supported by the cultivation of qi refining. 1 year later, Lin Sun's remaining cultivation of qi refining was exhausted, and he started the cultivation of body refining. 2 years later, Lin Sun started the cultivation of spirit refining. As time went by, one day in the 5th year of flying in this desolate starry sky, all the strength of Lin Sun was completely exhausted. His whole body was dim, and his consciousness seemed to fall into a state of suspended animation. Only an instinctive will was supporting him. At this time, Lin Sun's mind was surprisingly calm and clear. Life and death, emptiness and fullness, withering and flourishing, yin and yang, it was also in such an extreme desperate situation that a variety of rare and incomparable insights emerged in Lin Sun's mind. Suddenly, Lin Sun stood up straight with a burst of strength, and a divine light burst out of his black eyes. Life and death were changeable, emptiness and fullness, rotation of withering and flourishing, mutual replacement of yin and yang. This was the so-called way of, after extreme sorrow comes bliss. Boom. When Lin Sun thoroughly understood this, his originally dry body and exhausted cultivation of body refining, qi refining and soul refining had an extreme reversal at this moment. His potential treasure house was completely stimulated, and the original power hidden in the deepest part of his talent and body was released. Then, the surging vitality rushed to his limbs and bones like a landslide and tsunami, flowing all over his body like a dry riverbed being watered by a downpour. After extreme sorrow comes bliss. If he hadn't been forced to such an extreme point, even Lin Sun himself couldn't believe that there was still such a huge potential that hadn't been tapped. In just a quarter of an hour, Lin Sun completely recovered and reached the peak of perfection. Although his cultivation hadn't broken through, Lin Sun could clearly feel that he was more than twice as powerful as before. Like a lake that had doubled in size, the lake was still a lake, but the water it contained had long been different from before. In the starry sky, Lin Sun stood quietly with his clothes and black hair fluttering. He exuded a kind of ethereal aura of perfection, and his eyebrows were full of disdain. At this moment, a strong sense of self-confidence arose in his heart. He glanced at the starry sky and said softly, "In this realm, I'm invincible." Every word resounded through the universe and shook all directions. As if being envied by God, Lin Sun had the transformation of, after extreme sorrow comes bliss, in the extreme despair, but this journey in the starry sky was not over. Unconsciously, another year had passed. Lin Sun had to use the same trick again and tried his best to save his physical strength. Even so, the consumption of strength still became precarious. If it were an ordinary person who suffered such torment, he would have already broken down and given up on himself. However, Lin Sun still persisted. He would never give up like this unless death came. I don't know whether Guyupu and Li Xianwei know that the way of survival left by Master would be so difficult and torturous, Lin Sun sighed in his heart. It had been 6 years. Flying alone in this empty, desolate, and lifeless, boundless starry sky, without resources, without vitality, without power, this kind of unprecedented experience and tribulation was enough to torture anyone who didn't have a strong mental state to the point of insanity. Just as Lin Sun's thoughts were flying, he suddenly noticed that the pointer of the cyclic 1000 tricks guide in his palm suddenly produced a buzz. Lin Sun subconsciously raised his eyes and looked into the distance. He saw a gray vortex portal silently appearing in the depths of the vast universe. At this moment, Lin Sun's body suddenly tightened and his eyes glowed. An indescribable excitement and joy rushed to his chest like a mountain torrent. The way of survival. Did it finally appear? Without hesitation, Lin Sun almost used up the last remaining strength of his body and sprinted towards the vortex portal in the distance. Boom! The moment his figure rushed in, Lin Sun only felt that the world in front of him was turned upside down. His body was uncontrollably wrapped up by a terrifying teleportation force. Finally, I can leave. At this moment, Lin Sun's mind, which had been tense for 6 years, was completely relaxed. He didn't care where this vortex portal would send him. As long as he could leave this damn place like a confinement, it would be fine. Then, Lin Sun, who had completely exhausted his strength, blacked out and fell into a deep sleep. He was too tired. In the heaven accessing place, the mysterious woman, she, revealed a smile. Over the past 6 years, she had witnessed everything about Lin Sun. Several times, even she herself couldn't stand it and wanted to help him. But every time, Lin Sun miraculously persisted. Until now, seeing Lin Sun successfully jump out of the confinement, she also felt relaxed and happy, as if a heavy burden had been lifted from her shoulders. If you're tired, go to sleep. In the next moment, she's dreamy figure walked out of the heaven accessing place. This was a starry space tunnel, filled with space-time turbulence. Light rain was flying everywhere, gorgeous and extremely dangerous. Boom! A huge beast claw suddenly stretched out from the void in the distance and slapped towards this starry space tunnel. When she appeared, she seemed to have foreseen this scene in advance. Her expression was as calm as an ancient well. She just stretched out her hand and waved it gently. A finger force swept out and suddenly enlarged in the void. Like a pillar supporting the sky, it emitted a boundless aura and blocked the beast claw. The collision of the two produced a terrifying aftermath that spread out and caused the starry space tunnel to shake. The beast claw that covered the sky was shaken back. In the void far away, a dull beast roar sounded. She looked up and saw an incomparably huge and strange beast moving across the void, carrying thousands of stars with it. Its eyes were like a pair of suns. They were blood-red and terrifying, emitting a cold and ruthless divine light. But compared to its huge body, the stars in the sky were like inconspicuous beads. If Lin Sun woke up, he would definitely recognize this strange starry space beast. Moreover, he had seen it more than once. She's pupils shrank. With a wave of her sleeve, she rushed into the depths of the starry space tunnel at an incredible speed with the unconscious Lin Sun. Boom! The strange beast stretched out its huge claw and crushed the void, destroying the starry space tunnel behind she. A rain of light rained down and exploded in the void. That terrifying scene was enough to make an Emperor Realm cultivator break out in a cold sweat. But in the end, she left in advance and disappeared into a huge whirlpool door at the end of the tunnel. Devouring abyss. I will catch you. The strange beast stared at the place where she disappeared for a long time with its blood-red and cold eyes. Then, it turned around and disappeared into the vast void. Chapter 1859. After a long time, Lin Sun was awakened by a roar of a beast. He opened his eyes with difficulty, and saw towering trees with dense branches and leaves, damp and dark. He was lying on the ground covered with decaying leaves. Whoosh! Lin Sun took a deep breath, and his blurred consciousness gradually became clear, and his pupils became clear. But right after that, a wave of exhaustion and incomparable weakness surged through his body like a tide, and he couldn't even move a finger. He felt like a hungry beast, and every inch of his skin was eager for strength supplement. It was very sad. Fortunately, at least I got out of that damn place alive. Lying on the ground, Lin Sun breathed the vitality in the air, showing a long-lost relaxed look. He didn't bother to think about where he was now. He began to concentrate on running his cultivation quietly to absorb the dense spiritual energy between heaven and earth. Clatter! This was a forest with few people. As Lin Sun ran his cultivation, the spiritual energy in the nearby area suddenly rushed in like a tide. When the familiar spiritual energy was absorbed, Lin Sun still felt extremely happy, even if the power was only negligible for his current realm. He had been trapped in the barren, lifeless starry sky for 6 years. Now, he finally felt the vitality and the power of Tao. It was like a hungry ghost crawling out of hell, greedy and happy, with indescribable comfort and satisfaction. However, this joy only lasted for a moment, and Lin Sun's eyes suddenly narrowed. Boom! In the distance, a huge beast was charging over, uprooting mountains and toppling trees. It looked like a big grasshopper, with a green body and a length of 7 or 8 meters. It had sharp spear-like forelimbs and a pair of eyes like a pair of huge green lanterns. A fierce beast comparable to the king realm. Lin Sun made a judgment in an instant. In the past, this kind of fierce beast didn't attract his attention at all. But now, he was extremely weak, unable to use his cultivation or treasures. Not to mention the fierce beast of the king realm, any fierce beast could pose a great threat to him. Whoosh! A fishy smell assaulted his face as the huge dark green grasshopper rushed over. Its sharp forelimbs were like blades as it slashed over, bringing about resplendent green multicolored light. At this moment, Lin Sun was surprisingly calm. He rolled on the ground with a trace of strength he had just recovered. Bang! There was a huge crack in the ground where he had been, and mud flew everywhere. Lin Sun broke out in a cold sweat and gritted his teeth secretly. Even a grasshopper dared to attack him unscrupulously. It was really a case of a tiger being bullied by a dog when he fell to the plain. I must roast this grasshopper later. In his palm, he secretly held a jade talisman. This was a life-saving talisman. Its power was not very strong, but it was roughly equivalent to a full blow from a true sage. However, it was more than enough to deal with a king realm ferocious beast. Treasures like these were all trophies Lin Sun had obtained from his enemies in these years of battles, and they had long been of no value to him. Who would have thought that it would be put to good use at such a time? In the distance, the giant grasshopper was a bit surprised, as if it hadn't expected that such a weak human would be able to avoid its attack. It waved its forelimbs again and attacked Lin Sun. Evil creature! But before Lin Sun could make a move, a delicate cry rang out. Faster than the sound, a long stick made of animal bones smashed through the sky. Boom! The strong wind surged and the void roared. The huge dark green grasshopper was directly smashed into pieces by the rod, and smelly green blood splattered everywhere. Lin Sun looked up and saw a delicate figure breaking through the air. She was wearing a sleeveless animal skin shirt, revealing a small, slender waist. Beneath the shirt was a pair of smooth, slender legs that were full of power. Her skin was wheat-colored, and her silver ear-length hair was short. Her eyes were big and bright, and she was pretty, exuding a wild beauty. "Hey, are you okay?" The silver-haired woman looked at Lin Sun boldly and directly with her bright eyes. Lin Sun said, "I'm fine." "Then stand up. Why are you still lying on the ground? Are you scared out of your wits?" The silver-haired woman couldn't help laughing, showing her white and neat teeth. She was pretty and valiant, with a unique style. Lin Sun took a deep breath, struggled to prop up his body, and was about to stand up shakily. The silver-haired woman came forward, grabbed his arm, and held his body steady. She joked, "Little brother, you are a big man, but you are so weak. Did you work too much at night?" It was the first time for Lin Sun to meet such an unrestrained woman. He couldn't help looking at her strangely, and also joked, "Little sister, don't you know the consequences of saying a man is weak?" The silver-haired woman, who was full of wildness and looked like a rose with thorns, giggled and said, "Come on, I can squash a few of you to death with one slap." As she said, she put Lin Sun on her shoulder. Lin Sun was stunned and asked hurriedly, "What are you doing?" The silver-haired woman had already strode off into the distance. "Don't let your imagination run wild. I'm not interested in little brothers who are too weak. I won't do those shameful things that force people against their will. I just saw that your legs aren't nimble, so I'll carry you for a while." Lin Sun was stunned. For so many years, it was the first time for Lin Sun to be carried by a woman, and a rare feeling of shame welled up in his heart. If the strong in the ancient desolation territory knew that the invincible demon god Lin had fallen into such a situation one day, how would they feel? "Hey, little brother, where are you from? Why haven't I seen you before?" On the way, the silver-haired woman asked casually. Lin Sun was speechless for a moment. Embarrassed to say it? No. Then there's something else. No. Then tell me. I got lost. Lin Sun gave such an answer after a long while. The silver-haired woman was stunned at first, and then laughed regardless of her image. Ha ha ha, little brother, you are really a weirdo. You are not only weak, but also lost. You are so interesting. Lin Sun was speechless. What was so funny about it? After a long while, the silver-haired woman stopped laughing, wiped the tears from her eyes and said, "My name is Nan Chiu. I come from the Mulberry tribe." Mulberry tribe? Yes, one of the 13 tribes of the Heavenly Tune boundary, the Mulberry tribe. Heavenly Tune domain? Yes, by the way, what's your name, little brother? Lin Daoyuan. So it's little brother Lin. Miss Nan Chiu, can you tell me more about the Heavenly Melody Realm? I seem to have lost some of my memories. When Lin Sun said this, Nan Chiu burst into laughter again. You're weak, lost, and even lost your memory. You're really interesting. Lin Sun, was it really that funny? But Lin Sun finally figured out that Nan Chiu should be this kind of character. Optimistic, strong, valiant, bright, and not bothering about trifles. Of course, she also liked to laugh unscrupulously. On the way, Lin Sun gradually learned some news. This was the Heavenly Melody Realm, a remote small world on an ancient path in the starry sky. In this world, it was controlled by the 4 great sects and the 13 tribes. Among them, the Sky Traveler Sword sect was the #1 power in the Tianxu realm. It was the leader of this realm. The Mulberry tribe, on the other hand, was merely one of the tribe forces that ranked at the bottom of the 13 tribes in terms of strength and ranking. Tianxu realm, starry sky, ancient path. Lin Sun's eyes were filled with a trace of trance. 6 years ago, he was still on the pilgrimage platform of Kunlun ruins. 6 years later, he crossed the empty starry sky and appeared on the starry sky ancient path. It should be known that in the ancient desolation realm, only those who became emperors could break through the barrier of the world and set foot on the starry sky. Other practitioners could never hope to reach the starry sky ancient path in their lifetime without special luck. But now Lin Sun was here. Nothing in the world was more changeable than this. Wow. Sister Nan Chiu brought back a man. Oh my God, doesn't Sister Nan Chiu hate marriage the most? Why did she bring back a man when she went hunting today? A burst of chaotic shouts rang out. Lin Sun looked up and saw a huge valley. The valley was enshrouded in spiritual energy and rosy clouds. Ancient stone houses were scattered in the valley, row upon row. There was no doubt that this was the place where the Mulberry tribe lived. Near the entrance of the valley, a group of young boys and girls were practicing martial arts. All of them were strong and full of heroic spirit. They were full of vigor and vitality, which was extremely amazing. When they saw Nan Chiu appear with Lin Sun on her shoulder, these young boys and girls began to make a scene. Nan Chiu rolled her eyes and said grumpily, "You little brats, what do you know? Hurry up and focus on practicing martial arts." With these words, she carried Lin Sun to the valley. Along the way, Lin Sun saw many strong practitioners of the Mulberry tribe. Men, women, old and young, all of them were extremely strong and full of vigor. Soon, Lin Sun learned that the Mulberry tribe had tens of thousands of people living here for generations. When the clansmen reached adulthood and reached the king realm, they would be sent to the outside world to practice. In short, this valley could be regarded as the ancestral land of the Mulberry tribe. Before long, Nan Chiu brought Lin Sun to a simple stone house. A tall old man happened to walk out of the stone house and said in surprise, "Nan Chiu, Why did you come back with a man on your shoulder? Nan Chiu said casually, Uncle, I found this guy in the ghost space forest. His body is too weak, so I brought him back because I was worried that something might happen to him. The old man looked at Lin Sun for a moment, and then said to Nan Chiu, Leave this child here. I'll take care of him. You go to cultivate. Don't forget that you're going to participate in the Tianxiu King battle in a month's time. Whether you can stand out or not, Nan Chiu hurriedly interrupted. Well, uncle, I understand. As she said, she put Lin Sun on her shoulder on the ground and said with a smile, Brother Lin, I'll have to trouble you to stay here for a while. Uncle Jiu is a famous alchemist in Tianxiu Circle. Take this opportunity to let him nourish your body. I will come to see you when I have time. Then, she waved her hand and turned away. Chapter 1860. The ninth uncle was Nan Leipring, one of the elders of the Mulberry tribe. He was an alchemist of the true saint realm and had high prestige in the tribe. In the stone house, Nan Leipring and Lin Sun sat on the ground. After a moment of silence, he looked at Lin Sun and said seriously, Child, Nan Chiu may not understand, but I can see that you are extraordinary. I only hope that you don't come with malice. Lin Sun cupped his hands and said, I'm just a lost man in a foreign land. When I recover my strength, I will leave. I won't affect anything here. Nan Leiping said with a smile, I trust you. Do you need my help? Lin Sun shook his head and euphemistically said that he just needed to meditate for a while. Nan Leiping left the stone house to Lin Sun and turned away. Lin Sun breathed out a long breath and began to meditate. This was the ancestral land of the Mulberry tribe. The spiritual qi here was extremely rich and contained abundant divine power. Although it was far inferior to some rare places in the world, Lin Sun was very satisfied. In the next few days, Lin Sun stayed in the house and seemed to be very peaceful, which made Nan Leiping, who had been secretly watching here, feel relieved. A stranger of unknown origin suddenly appeared in the tribe. No one could not be vigilant. Lin Sun was also aware of this, but he didn't take it seriously. Now he put all his attention on restoring his cultivation. But the fact was that it would take at least 3 months for him to recover by absorbing the spiritual qi of heaven and earth. The most important thing was that he didn't dare to absorb the spiritual qi of heaven and earth in the Mulberry tribe. Otherwise, all the spirit qi in the valley would be devoured by him alone. The commotion would be too big, and it would cause unnecessary misunderstandings. I still lack the divine medicine and spiritual marrow. On this day, Lin Sun woke up from meditation with some dissatisfaction. It had been 5 days, but his strength had recovered less than 1,000th of his peak. The reason was that after the transformation of extreme sorrow and then joy, his foundation and cultivation were twice as strong as before, and the power he could contain had reached a terrifying level, far beyond that of his peers. Now he only relied on absorbing and refining the spiritual qi of heaven and earth to recover completely, so the speed was extremely slow. After thinking for a while, Lin Sun stood up, pushed the door open and walked out. The morning breeze blew gently. The sunlight was just right, and the air was filled with the intoxicating fragrance of plant. On the training field far away, many strong warriors of the Mulberry tribe were practicing their martial arts, letting out bursts of shout. Lin Sun walked forward, feeling the aura of this world. Unlike the ancient Desolation region and the Kunlun ruins, the laws of heaven and earth in the Tianxiu world were abnormally strong and robust. Being in it, Lin Sun vaguely felt a kind of suppression, bearing the inexplicable aura of the laws. Lin Sun was clearly aware that the stronger the laws of order in the world were, the stronger the energy it could contain, and the more beneficial it was to the cultivation of cultivators. Conversely, the weaker the laws of the heavens and the earth were, it would obstruct the footsteps of cultivators instead. Because cultivators were utterly unable to sense and seek a higher realm of the Grand Tao. No wonder the martial monarchs all chose the starry sky ancient path. This is the only place that can withstand their power and satisfy their cultivation needs. Lin Sun was lost in thought. Look, that guy is the man that Sister Nancio carried back from hunting. A burst of laughter rang out from the roadside in the distance. Some young boys and girls looked at Lin Sun curiously. He's quite handsome, and his skin is very fair. It turns out that Sister Nancio likes this kind of man. A young girl covered her mouth and chuckled. Lin Sun was startled and felt helpless. There was no need to guess at all. The news that Nancio had carried him back must have spread throughout the Mulberry tribe. At the thought of this, Lin Sun did not know whether to laugh or cry. He was a peerless great saint, an existence of the Holy Way pilgrimage. Yet, he was carried away by a woman. Nancio will never like this gigolo. Suddenly, a loud shout rang out. Following that, a valiant young man walked over and glared at Lin Sun angrily. Let me tell you, don't even think about going overboard with Nancio. Lin Sun was stunned. You are. The valiant young man's face was gloomy. You don't need to know who I am. You just need to remember that Nancio is already engaged to Mu Shiyuan, the successor of the Tianqing swordsmanship sect. In the future, they will leave the Tianxu world together and go to the Tianheng world to cultivate. Lin Sun could not help laughing in his heart and said, I see. His carefree attitude made the valiant young man even angrier, and he said, Don't tell me you don't know Mu Shiyuan? He's the #1 true disciple of the Sky Path Sword sect, the #1 immortal king realm expert in the heavenly melody realm, and a cultivation genius that only appears once every 10,000 years. Compared with him, what are you? Lin Sun felt helpless. What am I? How is it that I, a peerless great sage, am inferior to a peerless king realm expert in your words? Of course, ignorance was not a crime, so Lin Sun was not angry about it. I see. You are doing this for Nancio's sake, Lin Sun said. The valiant young man's expression softened a little and he snorted. It's good that you understand. If I know that you still don't give up on Nancio, don't blame me for being rude to you. Then, he turned around and left. Lin Sun watched him leave and shook his head. Only now did he realize that the cultivation power in the Tianxu world was not as strong as he had imagined. The first successor disciple of the Tianqing swordsmanship sect was only at the top of the king realm. It could be inferred that the foundation of this sect was not that strong. At most, it was comparable to the heaven-reaching sword sect in the ancient desolation realm. Right, the Tianxu world is just a remote world on the starry sky ancient path, Lin Sun thought as he walked forward. Hey! Nancio walked quickly in the distance. Her short silver hair was fluttering in the wind. Her eyes were big and bright, and her wheat-colored skin was shining in the morning light. She was full of wild beauty. Did Nan Dong come to see you? Nancio walked up to Lin Sun and asked directly. There was a touch of anger in her beautiful eyes. Yes. Lin Sun was stunned for a moment before he realized who Nan Dong was. This brat. I'm going to teach him a lesson. Nancio stomped her feet and turned around to leave. Lin Sun stopped her and said, He is doing this for your own good. Nancio said, Bullshit. This brat admires Mu Shiyuan the most, but I am not interested in him. Lin Sun was surprised. But you are engaged, aren't you? Nancio rubbed her delicate eyebrows and said in distress, Alas, it's just a child's engagement. I have never met him in my life. How can I be his Taoist companion so easily? Lin Sun suddenly understood and said, So you don't want to marry him? Not really, Nancio was in a dilemma. I just haven't met him and I don't know him well. So I just… Well, do you understand? Lin Sun nodded and said, Don't worry. Take your time. I heard from Nan Dong that Mu Shiyuan is a great talent and an influential figure in the Tianxu world. Nancio nodded and then glared at Lin Sun. Who asked you to comfort me? Little brother, are you not weak now? She couldn't help laughing at the end of her words. Her red lips and white teeth were bright and beautiful. Before Lin Sun could respond, Nan Qiu waved her hand and said, "Little brother, I'm leaving now. I'll talk to you when I have time." Weak? Or kidney deficiency? Lin Sun's lips couldn't help but twitch. He cultivated the 5 viscera and nurtured the fetus in his kidneys. How could it be possible that he had kidney deficiency? What's more, he was not weak now. He must correct this girl's misconception the next time he saw her. Child, Nan Dong is right. Everyone in the Mulberry tribe hopes that Nan Qiu can marry Mu Shiyuan smoothly. We don't want any accidents to happen. Nan Leiping, the 9th uncle, came from afar and looked at the direction where Nan Qiu left with ardent expectation in his eyes. Then, he turned to Lin Sun and said, "In recent hundreds of years, the Mulberry tribe has gradually shown some signs of decline. Our influence among the 4 sects and the 13 tribes in the Tianxu world is far less than before." Lin Sun frowned imperceptibly and said, "So, you regard the marriage between Nan Qiu and Mu Shiyuan as a means to revitalize the power of the tribe?" Nan Leiping let out a long sigh and said, "Who would be willing to do this unless they have no other choice? If a tribe wants to survive for a long time, it often needs to make some unavoidable efforts." Immediately, he smiled again with a gratified look. "Fortunately, we didn't let Nan Qiu feel wronged. Her marriage with Mu Shiyuan is a match made in heaven. It's the dream of countless girls in the Tianxu world to marry Mu Shiyuan." Lin Sun looked indifferent and said, "It depends on whether Nan Qiu is willing or not. As an outsider, it was not appropriate for him to intervene in this kind of thing. But Nan Qiu had saved him once, so he felt it necessary to say something for her. Nan Leiping didn't refute and said, "Child, you are right. Next month, the Tianxu World War will begin. At that time, the top young king realm practitioners of the 4 sects and the 13 tribes will participate in the war." After a pause, he continued, "At that time, Nan Qiu can get in touch with Mu Shiyuan. I believe she will definitely like him. I have seen Mu Shiyuan. He is a talented young man with outstanding appearance. His foundation, talent and strength are all top-notch. He can be called a dragon among men." He was generous with his praise, and his words were full of uncontrollable appreciation. Lin Sun felt bored. After chatting for a while, he said goodbye and left. "Child, are you going out of the valley?" Nan Leiping asked. "Yes, go out for a walk and relax," Lin Sun said. "Do you need someone to accompany you?" "No need." Watching Lin Sun's figure gradually disappear, Nan Leiping showed a meaningful smile. His words should have dispelled some of the ideas in the young man's mind, right? Even if the young man didn't have any ideas about Nan Qiu, how could he get involved after hearing these words? Didn't he see that Lin Sun already wanted to relax? If he wasn't upset, why would he need to relax? Chapter 1861. Walking out of the valley, Lin Sun smiled inexplicably. Just now, Nan Leiping must have instructed Nan Dong to stand up and accuse him. Placing the hope of a tribe's prosperity on a marriage contract. Oh, it seems that the situation of the Muzang tribe is not optimistic. That's why they did such a stupid thing. Maybe it's called seeking medical help in an emergency. Lin Sun shook his head and stopped thinking about it. He was just a passerby. At most, he would help Nan Qiu. Whoosh! The next moment Lin Sun disappeared. Thousands of miles away, on the top of a mountain full of spiritual energy, Lin Sun stood in the void and took a deep breath. Clatter, the spiritual energy on the mountain, which was tens of thousands of meters high, rushed into Lin Sun's mouth like a great river. Half a quarter of an hour later, the mountain peak that was enshrouded in dense spiritual energy had become dim, and it no longer had that kind of divine-like spiritual energy. Lin Sun immediately stopped. If he continued to swallow the spiritual energy, the mountain would be completely destroyed. But it didn't hurt his foundation now, and he could recover in the future. Whoosh! Lin Sun didn't stop and moved away again. He urgently needed to recover his strength now, so he could only find some spiritual mountains and water in the wilderness to absorb power. Up, over a mighty river, Lin Sun stretched out his hand and grabbed a spiritual vein hidden deep at the bottom of the river. The spiritual vein was more than 30 meters long, with cyan light flowing around it. Lin Sun opened his mouth and swallowed it. The spiritual vein, which was enough for a king realm practitioner to refine for a year and a half, was instantly refined into a stream of heat, which flowed all over his body. In the following time, Lin Sun's figure flashed between heaven and earth, moving farther and farther away, looking for the cultivation resources he needed. 2 days later, Lin Sun stood in front of a desert and felt his body calmly. I've almost recovered 1% of my full strength. This made him frown. It was still a little slow. At the same time, Lin Sun also made a judgment. Although the Tianxu world was located on the starry ancient path, it was obviously not rich in cultivation resources, which was almost the same as the ancient desolation territory. One had to understand that during this day, he had searched everywhere in an attempt to dig up some godly medicines. However, in the end, he only managed to gather some king medicines. To the current him, they were useless. That's all I can do now. Lin Sun took action again. Now, he only knew that he was in the Tianxu world, which was located in a remote area of the starry sky ancient path. Naturally, he was not willing to stay here for a long time. Half a month later, Lin Sun's clothes fluttered in the wind. He walked on the sea of clouds like an immortal. Now his strength had recovered to about 20% of his heyday. The area within a radius of 30,000 li has been explored. It's time to go back. Lin Sun made a decision. When he returned this time, he planned to ask Nan Leiping about leaving the Heavenly Toon realm. If there were no accidents, he would bid farewell to Nan Qiu. Muzang tribe. Far away, Lin Sun heard a voice mixed with angry disputes before he got close. Lin Sun was stunned and approached. A group of figures gathered outside the valley. There were both men and women, and they all wore beautiful clothes. Their auras were powerful, and their faces were filled with arrogance and impatience. In front of the valley, there was a group of experts from the Mulberry tribe, led by Nan Leiping. He was a powerful old man, but at this moment, his face was livid and his hair was standing on end. Since when did your Cloudfire tribe represent the Sky Path Sword sect? Want to stop the engagement between Nan Qiu and Mu Shiyuan? Don't even think about it. Nan Leiping shouted like a thunder. The nearby experts of the Mulberry tribe were also extremely angry, and their faces were gloomy. Nan Qiu, who was in the crowd, was in a trance. Her pretty little face was slightly pale, and she didn't have the bright and valiant smile in the past. Haha, Nan Leiping, don't deceive yourself. Without the approval of the Sky Path Sword sect and Mu Shiyuan, how could I announce this in person? Among the group of figures outside the valley, an elegant old man in a black robe said with a smile. Impossible! Nan Leiping's eyes were red and his voice was hoarse. How could the Sky Path Sword sect do such a thing? It's impossible. Haha, I know you can't accept it, so I brought you a marriage contract signed between you and Mu Shiyuan. The elegant old man in a black robe laughed and took out a red marriage contract, which had been torn into several pieces. The elegant old man in a black robe seemed to be kind, but in fact he was gloating and reminded, Nan Leiping, I didn't tear this marriage contract. Mu Shiyuan tore it himself and asked me to give it to you. Nan Leiping felt like he was struck by lightning. He recognized the marriage contract at a glance, but he didn't expect that when he saw it now, it was already in pieces. The clansmen of the Mulberry tribe were also stunned and angry. Was this really done by Mu Shiyuan? If so, it was too abominable. Seeing this scene, the elegant old man in a black robe showed a touch of complacency. He took out another letter and said, Oh, by the way, I also have a marriage contract written by Mu Shiyuan himself. Nan Leiping, do you want to have a look? There was mockery in his voice. There was even a marriage contract. Lin Sun, who saw all this in the dark, couldn't help but be surprised. Mu Shiyuan was too ruthless. He obviously didn't intend to leave any face for the Mulberry tribe. Lin Sun looked at Nan Qiu in the crowd. This optimistic, strong and valiant girl was biting her lips tightly at the moment. Her pretty face was pale and her eyes were full of confusion, which made Lin Sun feel distressed. He still remembered that Nan Qiu said hesitantly that she hadn't got in touch with and understood Mu Shiyuan. How could she accept the marriage at once? The implication was that she didn't completely resist such an arrangement in her heart, and she had fantasized about trying to understand Mu Shiyuan. But now, with the shredded marriage certificate and the annulment contract, all of this was completely destroyed. This kind of blow was undoubtedly too hard for a woman. A woman who was heartlessly broken off from a marriage contract. How could she raise her head in the future? Mu Shiyuan, a well-known figure in the Tianxu circle, refused Nan Qiu in this way. How could she survive in the Tianxu circle in the future? At that time, no matter where she went, she would be ridiculed and ridiculed. Nan Leipeng took the marriage contract with trembling hands. There was only one sentence written on it, 4 words. The marriage contract is invalid. There was no explanation, no reason, just a direct sentence. Puff. Nan Leipeng was so angry that he coughed up a mouthful of blood. His body trembled and he gritted his teeth. Mu Shiyuan. Mu Shiyuan, you are so cruel. The other clansmen of the Mulberry tribe were dumbfounded at the moment. Originally, they all hoped that the marriage contract between Nan Qiu and Mu Shiyuan could improve the current situation of the tribe. Who would have thought that such a terrible news would come? Why did they ask you to break off the marriage? After a while, Nan Leipeng raised his head and looked at the elegant old man in a black robe in the distance. His face was livid and fierce. Oh, it's very simple. The elegant old man in a black robe looked proud. Because Mu Shiyuan will be engaged to my daughter. Then, he pointed to a woman in a gorgeous dress beside him and said, Look, this is my daughter, Eugene. The woman in gorgeous dress was outstanding. She raised her chin slightly and looked at Nan Qiu in the crowd in the distance with a touch of arrogance. Sister Nan Qiu, you have to take care of yourself. Don't be angry, or I won't be able to bear it. These words were extremely harsh. Nan Qiu finally couldn't control herself. She turned around and rushed into the valley. Suffering such a great shame, she was on the verge of losing control of her emotions. The woman in gorgeous dress couldn't help but laugh complacently. At this point, Nan Leipeng completely understood that Mu Shiyuan's breaking off the engagement must have something to do with the Cloudfire tribe. You Zhongting, you. Nan Leipeng roared and was too angry to speak. Ha ha, no need to talk nonsense. I'm leaving. The elegant old man in a black robe laughed as if he had won a great victory. He turned around and left with a group of people. On this day, the news about Nan Qiu's breaking off the engagement spread throughout the Mulberry tribe. This bolt from the blue cast a shadow over the whole tribe. Nan Leipeng was so angry that he fell ill and almost went berserk. Lin Sun didn't care about this. He only cared about Nan Qiu's situation. What are you doing here? Do you think you can take advantage of my sister's breaking off the engagement? Wishful thinking. When seeing Lin Sun appear, Nan Dong, who was guarding in front of Nan Qiu's gate, roared as if to vent his anger. Lin Sun glanced at him. Just a glance made Nan Dong, who was in anger, tremble all over. His soul felt like falling into an ice cave, and he felt a suffocating sense of oppression. The anger of the weak is never worthy of sympathy. If you want to do something for your sister, get out of my way. Lin Sun said and stepped forward. Nan Dong subconsciously stepped back. When Lin Sun pushed the door open and entered, he came to his senses. Was he scared off? He was completely stunned. In the room, the light was dim. To Lin Sun's surprise, Nan Qiu didn't cry, nor was she sad or angry. She sat quietly in front of the window with a blank look and empty eyes, as if she had lost her soul. Lin Sun closed the door and stepped forward, saying, "I can help you." This one sentence carried a power that reached straight to Nan Qiu's heart, causing it to surge in her heart. A trace of clarity appeared in Nan Qiu's empty eyes. She stared at Lin Sun in front of her for a while, and then suddenly stood up and hugged him tightly, crying silently. Hot tears soaked Lin Sun's clothes and shoulders. Lin Sun sighed in his heart. A woman, no matter how high her cultivation was doomed to suffer such a humiliating blow. After a long time, Nan Qiu stopped crying. She let go of Lin Sun's hands and took a few steps back. She said in a low voice, "Little brother Lin, I'm sorry to let you see such a joke." Lin Sun rubbed her head and said gently, "You're not a joke. I said I can help you. You shouldn't bear such a shame." Nan Qiu looked up at Lin Sun in confusion and said, "But he is Mu Xiuan, Mu Xiuan." This name was a legend in the Tianxiu circle, and he was supported by the Skyway swordsmanship sect. Who could go against him? Lin Sun couldn't help laughing and said softly, "In my eyes, he is nothing." Chapter 1862. Nan Qiu burst into laughter and rolled her eyes at Lin Sun. Lin Sun's words were just a joke to comfort her. Lin Sun also laughed. "It's good that you can still laugh." Without further ado, he took Nan Qiu out of the room. "What are you going to do?" Nan Qiu was confused. "I'm going to find Mu Xiuan to help you vent your anger," Lin Sun said casually. "What?" Nan Qiu was dumbfounded. How could this weak, lost, and frustrated fellow take her joke seriously? "What?" Nan Dong, who had been guarding outside the stone house, was shocked. He couldn't believe his ears. What did this toy boy say? Was he going to find Mu Xiuan for revenge? "Stop! Where are you taking Nan Qiu? Damn it! Is he going to take the opportunity to take Sister Nan Qiu away?" When they saw Lin Sun and Nan Qiu walking out of the valley, many strong practitioners of the Wood tribe came to block them. Everyone's expression was unsightly. Today, Mu Xiuan and Skyline Sword Sect entrusted the Cloudfire tribe to break off the engagement, which was a great humiliation for the Wood tribe. In a few days, the whole Tianxiu world would regard the Wood tribe as a joke. At this time, Lin Sun, an outsider, was going to leave with Nan Qiu. Did he really think that he could take advantage of Nan Qiu's engagement? "Brother Lin, let me go." Nan Qiu was anxious. Lin Sun stopped and ignored the people around him. He looked at Nan Qiu and said, "How much hope do you think you or your clansmen will have for revenge in the Tianxiu world?" Nan Qiu was shocked and her expression changed. Mu Xiuan was the first successor of Tianxiu world. How could Lin Sun take revenge on Mu Xiuan? Even 10 Wood tribes couldn't do it. "How dare you? How dare you slander our Wood tribe?" All the strong practitioners of the Wood tribe were furious. Lin Sun still ignored them and looked at Nan Qiu. "Trust me once?" Nan Qiu said in a trembling voice. "Can I?" Lin Sun smiled. "Why not? You are so arrogant." Many strong practitioners of the Wood tribe couldn't help but take action. They wanted to capture Lin Sun and stop him from taking Nan Qiu away. Boom! Treasure light flashed and Dao techniques swept out with great momentum. Lin Sun still ignored him and left with Nan Qiu. His sleeves fluttered in the wind, and he didn't even turn his head. It was as if he didn't notice the various attacks coming from behind him. Nan Qiu, on the other hand, could not remain calm. Her heart was clenched as she turned pale with fright. But in the next moment she was stunned. The attacks and treasure lights that covered the sky were like fleeting fireworks. Before they could even get close, they were annihilated like bubbles. She suddenly turned her head and looked at Lin Sun. For the first time, she realized that she didn't seem to know what kind of person Brother Lin was. In the distance, the strong warriors of the Mulberry tribe were also dumbfounded. Their hearts trembled as they looked at Lin Sun, who was accompanying Nan Qiu and gradually moving further and further away, as if he was a god. Who is he? Until the figures of Lin Sun and Nan Qiu disappeared, someone couldn't help asking. Everyone looked at each other. They only knew that this man was carried back by Nan Chiu when she went hunting. Other than that, they knew nothing else. "Quick, go tell Uncle Gio," someone shouted. Nan Laping had suffered a great blow today. At this moment, he was sitting in his room in a daze, looking gloomy and dispirited. "It's over, everything is over." The Cloudfire tribe was the sworn enemy of the Mulberry tribe. Now that they had married Mu Shiyuan, how could the Mulberry tribe survive in the future? At the thought of this, Nan Laping's heart ached as if it was stabbed by a knife. Uncle Gio, that stranger took Nan Chiu away. When his clansmen brought the news, Nan Laping couldn't help but be furious. What an arrogant boy! But when he learned what had happened, especially when he learned that the clansmen couldn't hurt Lin Sun at all, a flash of light suddenly flashed in his eyes. Could it be was this person also a hidden expert? Immediately, Nan Laping frowned and showed an anxious expression. "Oh no! Mu Shiyuan is the first successor of the Tianqing swordsmanship sect, but he wants to take Nan Chiu to take revenge. No matter how strong he is, how can he fight against the Tianqing swordsmanship sect? If he fails, the Mulberry tribe will also be implicated when the Tianqing swordsmanship sect blames him. How can the Mulberry tribe bear the anger of the Tianqing swordsmanship sect?" Thinking of this, Nan Laping couldn't sit still anymore. He shouted, "Quick, mobilize people to go to the Tianqing swordsmanship sect with me. No matter what, we must stop that boy from doing stupid things." Crash! The void rippled. Lin Sun steered the vast universe arc to fly above the sea of clouds. Although the speed was not as fast as teleportation, it was almost the same. Nan Chiu was in a trance along the way. Obviously, she was very nervous. Go to the Tianqing swordsmanship sect to take revenge? She didn't even dare to think about it before. The Tianqing swordsmanship sect was the overlord of the Tianqing realm, the supreme ruler in the eyes of countless practitioners. Lin Sun said, "Miss Nan Chiu, do you know the way out of the Tianqing realm?" Nan Chiu asked, "Are you leaving?" Lin Sun said, "Yes, I will leave after I help you vent your anger." "Little brother Lin, where on earth are you from?" Nan Chiu couldn't help asking. She felt that she couldn't see through the man in front of her. Lin Sun thought for a moment and said, "A place very far away from the starry sky ancient path." Nan Chiu suddenly smiled. "You must be an extraordinary person to be able to come here from such a faraway place." Nan Chiu then told Lin Sun that there was only one way to leave the Tianqing realm, and that was to take a realm ship. Realm ships could easily pass through the world barrier. After entering the starry sky, they could safely reach other places on the starry sky ancient path by following a fixed and reliable route. Realm ships were extremely expensive and could only be built by the great forces on the starry sky ancient path. The Tianqing realm was just a remote small world on the starry sky ancient path, so it didn't have the ability to build realm ship. However, according to Nan Chiu, a realm ship would arrive at the Tianqing realm during the Battle of the Tianqing realm. At that time, some of the big shots who came on the realm ship would choose some of the experts who performed well in the Heavenly Melody King battle, and leave the Heavenly Melody realm together. Hearing this, Lin Sun couldn't help asking, "Where are these big shots from?" Nan Chiu's big bright eyes showed a trace of longing. "Do you world? A big world on the starry sky ancient path could be classified as a first-class world in the starry sky. There were 16 small worlds under the Diyu world, and the Tianqing realm was one of them. In the Diyu world, there was a famous imperial family, the Yu family. It had an ancient orthodoxy, countless spiritual mountains and blessed lands, and countless heroes. In the Tianqing realm, all the young practitioners who reach the King realm are eager to cultivate in the Diyu world. For example, in this battle of the Tianqing realm, the top 10 young practitioners will be chosen by some big shots from the Diyu world to cultivate in the Diyu world. Nan Chiu's voice was full of longing. "If I can go to the Diyu world to cultivate, our Mulberry tribe will also benefit. The big shot who will take me away will give the tribe behind me a talisman of disciple acceptance. With this talisman, the tribe will have a layer of protection, which is enough to make other forces afraid. Hearing this, Lin Sun understood. The Diu world. Lin Sun realized that if he wanted to know more about the Starry Sky ancient path, he had to go there first. It had been 6 years, and he still couldn't be sure where Hu, Old Toad, and Alu went when the Kunlun ruins fell. Nan Xiu suddenly sighed, "But I'm afraid I can't participate in the battle of the Tianqing realm now." "Don't worry, you can." Lin Sun's black eyes were calm, and he had made up his mind. Snow Melody Mountain. Tianqing swordsmanship sect was the place where the first spiritual vein gathered in the Tianqing realm. It was the holy land for cultivators in the Tianqing realm. 10 days later, the battle of the Tianqing realm would begin on Snow Melody Mountain. There was an ancient city at the foot of Snow Melody Mountain. During this period of time, numerous cultivators had converged over from all directions with the intention of watching this unprecedentedly grand event. Some top figures from the 4 sects and the 13 tribes were also eager to get into action, preparing for the battle of the Tianqing realm. "Have you heard that the big shots from the Danding Taoism sect are coming from the Diu world?" The Danding Taoism sect? It's one of the top 3 sects in the Diu world. Its foundation can be traced back to the ancient times. It's a very prosperous sect with many strong practitioners. I wonder which lucky ones will be chosen this time. In the city, people were talking about the battle of the Tianqing realm everywhere. It was noisy and lively. "Let's not talk about this. Have you heard that Mu Shiyuan, the first inherited disciple of the Tianqing swordsmanship sect, has broken off his engagement with a woman named Nan Qiu from the Muzang tribe?" "Really?" "It's true. This morning, the Cloudfire tribe released the news that Mu Shiyuan will marry Eugene, the daughter of the chief of the Cloudfire tribe." "Ha ha ha, the Muzang tribe is so unlucky. Not only is their power declining, but they've also lost Mu Shiyuan, a powerful foreign aid. In the future, I'm afraid they'll be removed from the ranks of the 13 tribes." "Nan Qiu? Hee, how can a girl with no reputation be worthy of Mu Shiyuan?" The news of Mu Shiyuan breaking off the engagement had also spread throughout the city, causing a huge uproar. The uproar continued. Mu Shiyuan. He was the most dazzling star in the Tianqing realm. It was difficult for the news of him breaking off the engagement to not attract attention. As for Nan Qiu, she had undoubtedly become a joke in everyone's eyes. Whose treasured ship is that? How audacious! Doesn't it know that flying is prohibited in the city below Shualai Mountain? Suddenly, someone noticed that a treasured ship flew over from the sky and hovered steadily in the sky above the city. It was only a few kilometers away from the peak of Shualai Mountain. Isn't he courting death? Soon, many cultivators in the city noticed this as well, and they couldn't help but feel surprised. Chapter 1863. A sea of clouds rose. Standing atop the vast universe arc, one could see Snownote Mountain in the distance, as well as the ancient buildings that lined the mountain. That was where Tianqing Sword Sect was located, a place that countless practitioners in the Tianxu world could only look up to. Nan Qiu was in a trance and was in a daze. Only when she arrived here did she feel an indescribable tension and pressure. Tianqing Sword Sect. For her, who grew up in the Tianxu world, this place was like a sacred place, unattainable and inviolable. But today, Lin Sun brought her here, and they appeared in the sky in such a dignified manner. "Are you afraid?" Lin Sun asked softly. Nan Qiu nodded and then shook her head, seeming to be in a dilemma. Lin Sun sighed. "Silly girl, when Tianqing Sword Sect broke off the engagement, did they care about your feelings? When Mu Shiyuan wrote the engagement without hesitation, did he think about your feelings?" Nan Qiu's eyes turned red at once. The anger that had been suppressed in her heart for a long time gushed out like a tsunami. She took a deep breath and said, "I have never liked him. I only hate him for humiliating me in this way and trampling on my self-esteem. How can I raise my head in the future?" Lin Sun said softly, "That's right. They made a mistake, so they should pay the price." Who is so bold? How dare you fly in the air without permission? A roar resounded from Shualai Mountain in the distance. Boom! The sea of clouds tumbled and shattered. A sword light tore the sky like a divine rainbow, whistling over and turning into a man with wide sleeves and a wide belt. He stepped on his flying sword, his sleeves fluttering, his long hair dancing in the wind, and his sword chi roared fiercely. In the city at the foot of the mountain there was a burst of cheers. It's Duanmu Jiang, one of the 6 inherited disciples of Tianxing sword sect. He cultivates the heaven-traversing Thousand Shadows sword and is a famous, peerless king. This is the demeanor of the successor of Tianxing sword sect. Amazing! Ha ha ha, I'm afraid that guy is out of luck. Isn't he courting death by flying in the air on a treasure ship? Duanmu Jiang looked at Lin Sun and said aggressively, "No matter who you are, you have violated the rules of Tianxing sword sect. I don't care who you are. You violated the rules of my Sky Path sword sect. I'll give you a chance to repent and atone for your sins." His voice was cold. In the heavenly melody realm, the Sky Path sword sect was the overlord. They were the supreme leaders. This made Duanmu Jiang appear extremely powerful and confident. Dead? Lin Sun smiled. It really surprised him that a successor of a sect who was content with a corner of the world should be so overbearing. Looks like you're going to be stubborn. Duanmu Jiang's expression turned cold. With a whoosh, the flying sword beneath his feet shot out, turning into a streak of light that tore through the air and slashed towards the distant vast universe. Arkansas. Lin Sun flicked his fingers. Bang! The flying sword exploded. Duanmu Jiang's body trembled as he coughed out a mouthful of blood. He turned pale with fright and realized that something was amiss. He turned around and fled. But it was too late. Lin Sun made a grabbing motion in the air, and Duanmu Jiang's body was grabbed tightly like a chick. With a poof, Duanmu Jiang exploded in the void. Blood rained down. Nan Qiu's eyes widened, and her heart was in turmoil. So powerful! The city below was deathly silent. The cultivators that were originally here to watch the show had frozen on their faces at this moment, and they were flabbergasted. He had killed Duanmu Jiang with a single palm? It should be known that Duanmu Jiang was one of the 6 inherited disciples of the Skyline swordsmanship sect. This guy, he's obviously not here with good intentions, someone said in a trembling voice. Who is he? Why haven't I seen him before? After a while, the whole city was in an uproar. Everyone looked at Lin Sun with a touch of surprise and doubt. At this moment, Lin Sun put away the vast universe arc and spoke. Where's Mu Shiyuan? Show yourself. His words were like thunder from the 9th heaven, shattering the clouds in all directions. The rumbling spread out and the world seemed to tremble. Many cultivators felt their heads buzzing, and they almost coughed up blood. Mu Shiyuan, he's here for Mu Shiyuan, many people exclaimed. The entire city was in an uproar. The Tianxu Supreme War was about to begin, and countless cultivators had already gathered around the Shuelu Mountain. No one had expected that someone would appear in front of the Skyline swordsmanship sect at this time to provoke them. This was too shocking. The Skyline swordsmanship sect was the #1 power in the Tianxu boundary, and such a shocking thing had never happened before. Interesting. How many years has it been since I've seen someone dare to provoke us? A cold and deep voice resounded. On the Shuelu Mountain, a scarlet-red light shot through the sky and arrived. It suddenly transformed into a tall old man in a scarlet robe, and his whole body emanated a monstrous aura. Elder Zhuoming. Many cultivators in the city recognized the scarlet-robed old man as an elder of the Skyline swordsmanship sect, and he was called Qixia Sword Saint. He had a fiery temper and killed countless people. Behind Zhuoming was a group of men and women. All of them stood on flying swords and had an extraordinary bearing like dragons and phoenixes among men. When looked at from afar, it seemed like a group of sword immortals had appeared on the sea of clouds. Such a lineup shocked the cultivators in the city, and they knew that Lin Sun's words had infuriated the Skyline swordsmanship sect. But to everyone's surprise, Lin Sun seemed to turn a blind eye to such a situation, and his expression didn't change at all. He was indifferent as before. He just asked, "Who is Mu Shiyuan? How dare you? Who do you think you are? What kind of figure is Senior Brother Mu? How can he be seen by anyone?" A green-robed woman scolded. Lin Sun looked over, and a pair of divine light shot out from his eyes like a pair of crisscrossed sword chi. Puff! The green-robed woman was killed on the spot, and her blood splashed high. There was a sudden dead silence in the field. Even the city was covered with an oppressive and suffocating atmosphere. Lin Sun was too domineering. He killed without saying a word, and he didn't care about the Skyline swordsmanship sect at all. His overbearing means were shocking. Nan Chiu was stunned. She had never expected that Brother Lin beside her could be so terrifying when he attacked, as if he had become a different person. How strong was he? "If you don't want to die, ask Mu Shiyuan to come out immediately." Lin Sun's voice was indifferent. His dark eyes were deep, and he put his hands behind his back. His aura was almost non-existent, and he was so ordinary that he was inconspicuous. This was the skill of using power that he had honed in the cold starry sky for 6 years. When he didn't move, he would never waste any strength. Once he attacked, it would be a thunderous blow. How dare you?" Zhuoming's face was livid. He didn't have time to react when Lin Sun killed someone under his nose, which made him angry. Boom! He attacked without hesitation. A majestic fiery red sword chi soared into the sky, stirring up the sky and releasing a violent and boundless murderous aura. When a saint was angry, blood would flow like a river. This Qixia sword saint, who was famous in the Tianxiu realm, was a peerless saint. When he attacked, the momentum was extraordinary. Seeing this, many people secretly breathed a sigh of relief, thinking that the outcome was settled. But in the next moment, a scene that terrified everyone happened. Lin Sun casually pinched his fingers, and the majestic fiery red sword chi was firmly imprisoned in the void. Then, with a bang, it exploded in the sky like a beautiful firework, creating a shocking visual impact. Everyone was absent-minded. "You're courting death." Lin Sun waved his sleeve. With a bang, a swanny seal was condensed and pressed down from the sky, covering the sky and the sun. Zhuoyang was shocked and finally realized something. "Oh no, you are..." Boom! The next moment, his whole body was suppressed by the swanny seal and smashed into a mass of meat paste. Blood splashed in the void. A famous sword saint in the Tianxiu realm died like this. Everyone's pupils dilated, and they almost couldn't believe their eyes. Even a peerless saint couldn't resist a blow from this young man? It was incredible! The men and women who followed Zhuoyang were all pale and soaked in cold sweat at this moment. They looked at Lin Sun as if they were looking at a devil. It wasn't until this moment that they realized how terrible their opponent was, who was far beyond their ability to fight against. "If you don't want to die, go and call Mu Shiyuan out." Lin Sun glanced at these men and women coldly, as if he was looking down at a group of insignificant ants. With his current power, even if he only had 20% of what he had been at his peak, he was still not someone that any saint could challenge casually. Suddenly, an old voice resounded. "Fellow practitioner, I'm Gong Yangqi. If my Skyway swordsmanship sect has offended you, please let me know." Then, a slim old man with a sage-like demeanor appeared out of thin air. His eyes were flowing with the divine light of the law. In the city, all the practitioners gasped. Gong Yangqi, the headmaster of Skyway swordsmanship sect, a peerless saint. At the same time, Gong Yangqi was also regarded as the undisputed #1 in the Tianxiu realm. In the Tianxiu realm, he was like a supreme ruler with a high status. In the past, he was rarely seen. Nan Chiu felt that her brain was not enough to process what she had seen. What she had seen before and now was something she dared not imagine before. But now it all happened in front of her eyes. Lin Sun raised his eyes, glanced at Gong Yangqi and frowned. I said, ask Mu Shiyuan to come out. His words were rude. The practitioners in the city almost went crazy. Who in the Tianxiu realm dared to talk to Gong Yangqi like this? Unexpectedly, Gong Yangqi did not get angry. After thinking for a while, he sighed and said, that's fine. Then, he gave the order. Not long after, in the distant sea of clouds, a sharp and dazzling golden sword light swept over. A figure stood on the sword light and broke through the air. This man had a jade-like face, red lips and white teeth. He was dressed in white, and his appearance was quite outstanding. At first glance, people could tell that he was not an ordinary person. Greetings, headmaster. As soon as the man arrived, he bowed and saluted. Undoubtedly, he was Mu Shiyuan. Lin Sun looked at him expressionlessly, but in his heart, he was quite disapproving. As a peerless sword practitioner of King Realm, Mu Shiyuan was far worse than Yun Qinbai. Nan Qiu also looked up. This was the first time she had seen Mu Shiyuan. I'll continue to update tomorrow. Chapter 1864. There was silence above the sea of clouds. Nan Qiu stared at Mu Shiyuan, her expression uncertain. It was this man who brought her a heavy blow and humiliation by breaking off the engagement. She couldn't understand why he was so determined. Even if he was unwilling, why did he hurt her like this? Just because he was the first descendant of Tianqing sword sect? The more she thought about it, the angrier she became. Her body trembled and she almost couldn't control herself. In the distance, Mu Shiyuan had obviously known something and noticed Nan Qiu's angry eyes. But he didn't care. He just looked at Lin Sun with a touch of disbelief. It seemed that he couldn't imagine why such a person dared to provoke Tianqing sword sect. Taoism Pier, Mu Shiyuan is here, Gong Yangqi said slowly. At the same time, Mu Shiyuan took a deep breath, suppressed his inner doubts, and cupped his hands. Mu Shiyuan greets Senior. I wonder how I have offended you. Kneel down. Lin Sun said casually. These two words shocked everyone present. Gong Yangqi's eyes also narrowed. Lin Sun obviously wanted to humiliate and trample on Mu Shiyuan on purpose. Mu Shiyuan's expression froze. His handsome face turned red and he said, Senior, killing someone is just a matter of having my head on the ground. I, Mu Shiyuan, would rather die standing than live kneeling. His words were sonorous and powerful, resounding through the sky. Many cultivators in the city were excited. This was the demeanor of the first King Realm swordsman of the younger generation. At the same time, they rejected Lin Sun in their hearts. How could a powerful cultivator act recklessly and aggressively? Lin Sun didn't care about this and said, Die standing? That's too easy for you. You'd better kneel. He pressed his hand and a terrifying force covered Mu Shiyuan. Taoism Pier, let's talk nicely. Gong Yangqi made a move without hesitation. A purple cloud emerged and turned into a surging torrent of sword qi to resist this blow. Boom! The torrent of sword qi collapsed like a piece of paper. Gong Yangqi's pupils shrank suddenly. What a terrifying force! Who was this man and why was he so powerful? Bang! Mu Shiyuan knelt in the void. His strength was not enough at all. If Lin Sun wanted to, this blow could turn him into ashes. Mu Shiyuan's cheeks flushed red as he screamed. He felt incomparable humiliation and anger. He was forced to kneel in front of everyone. He had never experienced such a feeling before. As a proud son of the heavens, he had never imagined that he would suffer such humiliation in front of the Sky Travel Sword sect in the Heavenly Melody realm. The expressions of the nearby disciples of the Skyway Sword sect changed, and they went silent like cicadas in winter. Gong Yangqi's expression changed indeterminately, and he felt extremely depressed in his heart. But in the end, he let out a long sigh. The situation was beyond his control, and he had no choice but to lower his head. And in the city below, everyone was stunned. Mu Shiyuan was forced to kneel. Some of the women who admired Mu Shiyuan felt that their hearts were about to break. Even Nan Xiu didn't expect that Lin Sun would be so domineering to suppress Mu Shiyuan in front of the headmaster of Tianqing swordsmanship sect. It must be a terrible feeling. Lin Sun said with deep eyes, "You must be very angry in your heart and don't understand why I am targeting you." Not bad. Mu Shiyuan gritted his teeth and his face was ashen. Lin Sun pointed to Nan Xiu beside him and said, "Her name is Nan Xiu, and she is my younger sister. Do you understand now?" What? There was an uproar in the field, and many people showed a look of disbelief. Nan Xiu, a woman who had been engaged to Mu Shiyuan since she was born, even if no one had seen her in person, who didn't know the name Nan Xiu. Gong Yangqi's face also changed, and he was shocked in his heart. He realized the problem, and for a moment, he only felt a little black in front of him. This morning, on behalf of Mu Shiyuan, the Skyway Sword sect entrusted the Cloudfire tribe to go to the Muzang tribe to break off the engagement. Now, the retribution came. In the city, countless practitioners were also dumbfounded. Before, they were still talking about the storm of breaking off the engagement. They regarded Nan Xiu as a joke, and their words were full of ridicule and ridicule. But at this time, Nan Xiu, the joke whose engagement was broken off, appeared in the sky, and stood in front of Mu Shiyuan, who was kneeling in the void. "Impossible! When did Nan Xiu have a brother like you?" Mu Shiyuan cried out as if he was struck by lightning, and his state of mind was completely out of control. He struggled to get up, but he was firmly suppressed there, maintaining the humiliating posture of kneeling. Lin Sun's eyes were cold. "Have you ever thought that your engagement breaking off almost ruined Nan Xiu's life? Have you ever thought that you are superior and can do whatever you want, and you have the backing of the Skyway Sword sect? How could you care about a woman from the Muzang tribe?" Lin Sun's voice was flat, but it resounded in the cold and depressing atmosphere. Many people looked unnatural. Lin Sun continued, "This time I made you kneel down. I didn't think whether it would ruin your life or not. I also wanted you to taste the feeling of being humiliated and trampled on. In short, this is revenge. Now, do you understand?" As his voice fell, there was a dead silence in the field. Nan Xiu's eyes were red, and her heart was indescribably moved. When she looked at Mu Shiyuan, who was kneeling in front of her like a prisoner, there was no pleasure of revenge in her heart, only disgust. Mu Shiyuan's expression changed, and finally he coughed up blood. He was so angry that he fainted. Gong Yangqi was shocked. He didn't care about anything else and quickly saved Mu Shiyuan. "My fellow practitioner, an eye for an eye. Are you satisfied now?" Gong Yangqi took a deep breath and asked. The others also looked at Lin Sun. Duanmu Jiang, one of the 6 inherited disciples of the Skyway Sword sect, was dead. Elder Zhuoming was dead. Now Mu Shiyuan was also unconscious while kneeling. This kind of revenge could be called bloody and heavy. But Lin Sun shook his head and said, "Without the support of the Skyway Sword sect, Mu Shiyuan wouldn't dare to do such a thing. Your Skyway Sword sect must pay the price." His words made Gong Yangqi's body cold, and the others were furious. What did this guy think of the Skyway Sword sect? "I want to use this place to meditate for a period of time. What do you think of it?" Lin Sun pointed to the Xuelua mountain in the distance. "Meditate?" Gong Yangqi was stunned, and his expression eased a lot. He forced a smile and said, "It's an honor for our Skyway Sword sect to come here. We're very happy." Lin Sun took a deep look at Gong Yangqi and said, "If it weren't for your good attitude, the Skyway Sword sect would have suffered a greater loss today." Gong Yangqi's lips were bitter. What did he mean by good attitude? He was suffering humiliation. Xuelua Mountain. Lin Sun spread his spiritual awareness and instantly found a blessed place where spiritual veins converged. He said, "My fellow practitioner, whose cave is this?" Gong Yangqi hurriedly said, "If you like it, you can practice in it." Lin Sun smiled and said, "Then I won't stand on ceremony." With that, his figure flashed and swept into the blessed place. Watching Lin Sun's figure disappear in the blessed place, Gong Yangqi's expression changed for a long time. Finally, he sighed with a gloomy expression. What kind of person did the Skyway Sword sect provoke this time? "My fellow practitioner, there's one more thing I need to trouble you with." Suddenly, Lin Sun's voice came from afar. Gong Yangqi's heart tightened. He said, "Go ahead." Lin Sun's voice came. "My sister is going to participate in the Tianxiu King battle. I hope you can arrange it for her." Gong Yangqi secretly breathed a sigh of relief and said, "It's a piece of cake. Don't worry." Seeing that Lin Sun had no other orders, Gong Yangqi turned around and left in a hurry. What happened today was a heavy blow to the reputation of the Skyway Sword sect. In particular, Lin Sun, a terrifying figure who didn't play by the rules, was still in the Skyway Sword sect. This made Gong Yangqi feel troubled. He knew that he had to make arrangements as soon as possible to avoid any more disturbances at this time. When Gong Yangqi came to the main hall of the sect, the senior members of the Skyway Sword sect had already gathered there, waiting for his arrival. "Headmaster, that man is cruel, overbearing, and cold-blooded. Are we just going to tolerate him riding roughshod over us like this?" Many people started talking at the same time. Every single one of them was furious. Today their sects had simply lost all faith. Gong Yangqi's face darkened. He shouted, "Shut up!" Everyone kept quiet out of fear, and the atmosphere in the main hall fell silent. From today onwards, no one is allowed to approach the blessed land at the back of the mountain, lest they disturb fellow Taoist Lin's cultivation. Taking a deep breath, Gong Yangqi issued an order. Also, during the Tianxiu King battle, treat the experts of the Mulberry Wood tribe as distinguished guests. Don't neglect them. If I find out that anyone dares to cause trouble for the Mulberry Wood tribe, don't blame me for being impolite. His voice was like thunder, resounding in the main hall. The senior members of the Skyway Sword sect were dumbfounded. They never expected that the headmaster would make such an arrangement at such a time of humiliation. However, Gong Yangqi couldn't be bothered to explain. He thought to himself, when the Tianxiu King battle comes to an end, the big shots from the Great Yu World's Pill Cauldron Dao sect will arrive. At that time, it will be the time for the Skyway Sword sect to take revenge. When he thought of this, Gong Yangqi calmed down a lot. He silently calculated how much he should pay to get the help of the big shots from the Pill Cauldron Dao sect. Every time the Tianxiu King battle came to an end, a top expert would be selected and brought to the Great Yu World for cultivation. Over the years, several disciples of the Skyway Sword sect had entered the Pill Cauldron Dao sect to cultivate through the opportunity of the Tianxiu King battle, which benefited the Skyway Sword sect a lot. Now, Gong Yangqi had several talismans of disciple acceptance given by the Pill Cauldron Dao sect. With these talismans, he would receive a layer of protection from the Pill Cauldron Dao sect. However, Gong Yangqi was also very clear that this kind of protection was only a deterrent. It was fine to deal with ordinary people, but if he wanted to deal with a terrifying figure like Lin Sun, he had to pay a great price. Perhaps, he could only get the help of the big shots from the Pill Cauldron Dao sect. Just wait until the Tianxiu King battle is over. Gong Yangqi secretly gritted his teeth. How could he not hate after suffering such a great shame? Chapter 1865. At the foot of the Snow Music Mountain, in front of the city. At dusk, Nan Laping appeared with a group of experts of the Mulberry tribe. Nan Laping frowned and said worriedly, "I wonder if Lin Daoyuan has brought Nan Qiu here." After leaving the Mulberry village, they rushed to the snow mountain at full speed, through wind and rain, in order to prevent Lin Sun from taking revenge on Mu Xiuan. But they didn't meet Lin Sun and Nan Qiu along the way. This made Nan Laping worried that Lin Sun would do something offensive and offend the Skywalk Sword sect. If that was the case, then their Mulberry tribe would be implicated as well. Alas, I just hope that boy won't do such a stupid thing. The other experts of the Mulberry tribe sighed. Let's go into the city and get some information. Nan Laping took a deep breath and walked into the city. Look, the people of the Mulberry tribe are here. The leader is Nan Laping. I heard that he was the one who arranged the marriage between Nan Xiu and Mu Xiuan. As soon as they entered the city, Nan Laping and the others felt something was wrong. All the cultivators they met along the way had strange expressions on their faces, and the gazes they shot at them carried curiosity and indescribable surprise. This made Nan Laping and the others feel uncomfortable. Did the thing they didn't want to see happen after all? Brother Laping. Suddenly, a tall old man in a brocade robe laughed and walked over. I haven't seen you for many years. You're getting more and more capable. Nan Laping recognized him at a glance. He was Shui Xiangdong, an elder of the Ghost Water tribe. Brother, don't laugh at me. You've probably heard that Nan Xiu's engagement was broken off, right? Nan Laping smiled bitterly. He had a good relationship with Shui Xiangdong. Shui Xiangdong said with a sigh, I've heard about it. It's hard not to know about it, but I didn't expect Nan Xiu to be so amazing. Nan Laping was stunned and then said unhappily, Brother, are you laughing at me? Shui Xiangdong was stunned. Don't you know that Nan Xiu went to the Skywalk Sword sect in person today? What? Nan Laping and the others turned pale with fright, and they seemed as if they'd been struck by lightning. This really happened. Where's Nan Xiu? Nan Laping could not help but ask. Shui Xiangdong said, I heard that the Skyway Swordsmanship sect placed him in the Skyway Pavilion. Hurry, hurry to the Heavenly Movement Pavilion. Nan Laping was instantly anxious, and he couldn't be bothered about anything else as he led the group away hastily. It's over. Nan Laping's mind was in a mess. Nan Xiu had obviously been captured by the Sky Path Sword sect. How was he supposed to salvage the situation? Tianxing Pavilion. When Nan Laping's group arrived, the sky was already dark, and the 300 m tall pavilion was decorated with lanterns and streamers, causing it to glisten brilliantly under the ink-black night sky. In front of the pavilion stood a group of successors of the Skyway Sword sect. This was the territory of the Skyway Sword sect, and outsiders were not allowed to trespass. But at this moment, Nan Laping couldn't care about all of this, and he said anxiously, I'm Nan Laping of the Mulberry tribe. Before he finished speaking, a successor of the Sky Path Sword sect suddenly turned around and said, You are the experts of the Mulberry tribe? Nan Laping quickly said, Yes. Although he was a sage, he did not dare to put on airs. He knew better than anyone else how powerful the Sky Path Sword sect was. Behind him, the other experts of the Mulberry tribe could not help but feel anxious. Everyone, please come in. We have already received the sect master's verbal order, and we will be waiting for you here. The successor of the Sky Path Sword sect smiled brightly, and he was extremely enthusiastic as he humbly and politely invited them. Nan Laping's mind buzzed. What did Nan Xiu do to make the sect master of the Sky Path Sword sect personally issue an oral order? The expressions of the people around him changed as well, and their hearts were pounding. Nan Laping took a deep breath and asked bitterly, Fellow Taoist, did I, Nan Xiu, do something wrong to anger your sect master? The successor of the Sky Path Sword sect looked slightly uncomfortable, but he still smiled and said, Everyone, please follow me. Miss Nan Xiu is doing very well. Welcome, everyone. The other successors of the Sky Path Sword sect bowed in unison. Nan Laping was stunned, and he suddenly felt that something was wrong. Why did the Sky Path Sword sect become so polite? Everyone, please follow me. The successor of the Sky Path Sword sect smiled and led the way. Nan Laping, who was still in a daze, exchanged looks with the others, and they braced themselves and followed the successor with doubts in their hearts. When they entered the Sky Path Pavilion, they saw Nan Xiu sitting in front of a table in the center of the hall, and several maidservants stood respectfully beside her, as if she was the master. Nan Lei Peng and the others were stunned. What was going on? Ninth uncle. Nan Xiu got up and said in surprise, "Why are you all here?" Nan Lei Peng said impatiently, "We were worried about you, but why are you?" He looked confused. "Everyone, please continue chatting. We will take our leave first." The successor of the Sky Path Sword Sect said with a smile, and hurriedly left with the maidservants, leaving the huge hall to the people of the Mulberry tribe. Nan Xiu took this opportunity to tell them everything that had happened in front of the Sky Path Sword Sect. Nan Lei Peng and the others were stunned after listening to her. Their expressions were extremely interesting, and they could not calm down for a long time. The man that Nan Xiu had carried back to the tribe had single-handedly suppressed the Sky Path Sword Sect. Who could believe it? At least, Nan Lei Peng and the others found it hard to believe. They asked repeatedly before they reluctantly accepted the truth. No wonder Shui Xiangdong, that arrogant old thing, took the initiative to greet me today. No wonder the successors of the Sky Path Sword Sect treated us so well. No wonder, after a long time, Nan Lei Peng sighed. The others were also excited. This time, Nan Xiu had gained a blessing in disguise, as she had received help from a noble. In the future, who would dare to look down on the Mulberry tribe in the Tianxiu boundary? Nan Lei Peng asked uneasily, "Nan Xiu, our tribe has neglected young Master Lin. Will he hate us because of this?" "Don't worry. Someone like him will not care about such a small matter." Nan Xiu could not help but laugh. The ninth uncle was a dignified man, but now he behaved like a child who had made a mistake, which was rare in the past. That's good, Nan Lei Peng was relieved, but he felt a little regretful. If he had known that the young man was so great, he would have treated him with the most solemn courtesy. Now it was too late to make friends with him. Snow Music Mountain. In the blessed enclave, Lin Sun was meditating quietly. His whole body was like a big abyss, swallowing the rolling spiritual energy coming from all directions. Rumbled divine light surged and Taoist light roared. In the end, the power of the spiritual veins buried under the Snow Music Mountain and the pure spiritual energy gathered between heaven and earth also rushed to the blessed enclave where Lin Sun was. For a time, the sky changed color, and the land was filled with the rumbling sound of Taoist sound. The whole Sky Path Sword Sect was alarmed. All the big shots were shocked, thinking that something terrible had happened. When they judged that it was caused by Lin Sun's cultivation, they were all stunned and dumbfounded. What kind of terrifying cultivation did he have to be able to do this? When did such a powerful man appear in the Tianxiu world? We are all great saints, but why do I always feel as small as an ant in front of him? Gong Yangqi was in a trance, and there was a storm in his heart. Lin Sun seemed to be unaware of all this. He was immersed in cultivation. Snow Music Mountain was worthy of being the place where the first sect in the Tianxiu world was located. The rich spiritual energy here was almost enough to meet his cultivation needs. 3 days later, Lin Sun had recovered more than half of his strength. 7 days later, Lin Sun had recovered 80% of his strength. As time went by, Lin Sun was like a bottomless pit, greedily swallowing the majestic spiritual energy bred in this world. This made the practitioners of Sky Path Sword Sect miserable, because they could not absorb any spiritual energy when they cultivated. All the spiritual energy was occupied by Lin Sun. 10 days later, Lin Sun's qi gradually disappeared. His strength had completely recovered to the peak, and his whole body was surging with the mysterious aura of the Great Way. Even though he was just sitting there, he exuded a domineering momentum that could deter the ninth heaven and devour the universe. The next step is to prepare to charge into the Saint King realm. With my current saint physique and extremely perfect path towards the Tao, I only have to capture a trace of a critical factor before I'll be able to advance along with it. Lin Sun thought for a moment, and then began to meditate again. In the 6 years of suffering in the silent starry sky, His cultivation had undergone many subtle and wonderful changes. Now that his strength had recovered to the peak, Lin soon had the opportunity to understand and experience the benefits of these changes. On this day, the Tianxiu King battle, which attracted the attention of the world, began in a huge martial arts arena in front of Snow Music Mountain. The top figures of the young generation from the 4 sects and the 13 tribes all participated in the battle, and there were many exciting battles. When Nan Qiu's figure appeared, she instantly became the center of attention of all the cultivators present here. Everyone knew that this woman from the Mulberry tribe was no longer the laughingstock whose engagement was broken off, but a dazzling figure that even the Sky Path Sword sect had to treat with respect. To everyone's surprise, Mu Shiyuan, who had been humiliated by kneeling down, participated in the Tianxiu King battle as if nothing had happened, and performed extremely well. However, every single gaze that was directed at him carried a slightly complicated expression. Some were filled with pity, some were filled with schadenfreude, and so on and so forth. The Tianxiu King battle lasted for 3 days, and finally, the 10 most outstanding practitioners were selected. Mu Shiyuan deserved to be the first, and Nan Qiu was also among the 10. Why are they not here yet? Gong Yangyu, the headmaster of the Sky Path Sword sect, had been waiting anxiously since the end of the Tianxiu King battle. Look, it's the border ship. The bigwigs of Danding Taoism sect are here. Suddenly, someone cried out in excitement. Chapter 1866. The realm ship was as large as a floating piece of land. It was thousands of acres wide, and there were many buildings on it. There were pavilions, terraces, artificial mountains, and rivers. When it flew over from the distant horizon, it rumbled like thunder and cast a shadow on the ground. Many cultivators gathered near Shuilai Mountain felt suffocated, and then their gazes blazed while yearning appeared on their faces. The realm ship could pass through the barrier of a realm and travel through the starry sky to reach other realms. Only ancient orthodoxies could possess it. Having a realm ship was also a symbol of an ancient orthodoxy. They're here. Gong Yangqi suppressed the excitement in his heart and soared into the sky to welcome them. After a while, the realm ship landed slowly. The important figures from the Pill Cauldron Dao court were personally welcomed by Gong Yangqi and headed to the main hall of the Sky Path Sword sect. There were a total of 7 important figures from the Pill Cauldron Dao sect. Leading them was the Pill Cauldron Dao sect's elder, Ma Taizhen, who was a sage king. Of the other 6, 5 were deacons and were all peerless great sages. One was the core disciple of the Pill Cauldron Dao sect, Yu Yunhe, and the other was a descendant of the Emperor Yu clan. He had outstanding talent and a strong foundation. He was traveling with Ma Taizhen to broaden his horizons. The combined strength of these 7 people was enough to sweep through the entire Tianxiu realm, and this was just the tip of the iceberg of the Pill Cauldron Dao sect's power. These are the 10 people selected this time? Ma Taizhen spoke in the main hall. His hair was as black as ink, and he wore a blue Taoist robe embroidered with a cauldron. He sat in the main seat in the middle, and every move he made had the might of a sovereign. Mu Shiyuan, Nan Qiu, and the rest of the 10 who stood out in the Tianxiu Supreme Battle all stood respectfully in the main hall. Senior, these are the 10. Gong Yangqi's expression was respectful and submissive. Even though he was respected as the sect master of the Skypath Sword sect, no matter if it was his cultivation or status, he was inferior to a great figure like Ma Taizhen. Not bad, not bad. Ma Taizhen nodded with a smile and suddenly asked, "Who is Mu Shiyuan?" Mu Shiyuan's body trembled. He immediately stood up and bowed. "Junior Mu Shiyuan greets Senior." Ma Taizhen's eyes lit up. He carefully looked at Mu Xiuyuan for a moment and revealed a satisfied smile. "When I came here, your sister Mu Xiuqi told me that you wouldn't disappoint me. Now that I've met you, I can see that you're indeed a genius, a dragon among men, a rare seedling." Mu Shiyuan's expression was excited, but his mouth was modest as he said, Senior's praise is too much. Junior doesn't deserve it. A commotion broke out in the hall, and everyone revealed looks of surprise. Only now did they know that Mu Shiyuan actually had an older sister cultivating in the Pill Cauldron Dao sect. Your sister and I are very close. If you encounter any trouble when you head to the Pill Cauldron Dao sect, feel free to look for me. Suddenly, Yu Yunhe, who sat below Ma Taijin, spoke in a clear voice. He had a handsome appearance and a full forehead. As his eyes blinked, a sea of clouds surged into appearance while lightning rumbled, and it was an extremely terrifying scene. Thank you for your guidance, senior brother. Mu Shiyuan's brows lit up with joy. Many people present could not help but feel envious. They had yet to head to the Pill Cauldron Dao sect, but Mu Shiyuan's path had already been paved by someone else. Then let's do it this way. We'll rest here for 3 days, and then we'll leave with these 10 people and return to the Great Yu world. Not long after, Ma Taijin announced, all of you can leave for now. Gong Yangqi ordered. Immediately, Mu Shiyuan, Nanqiu, the other 9 people, and some insignificant disciples of the Sky Path Sword sect left the hall. Gong Yangqi, what's the matter? Ma Taijin asked. Plop. At this moment, Gong Yangqi did something unexpected. He came to the front of the hall and directly knelt on the ground. With a sorrowful expression, he said, Senior, please save my Sky Path Sword sect. Ma Taijin and the others were surprised and stunned. The Sky Path Sword sect was the #1 sect in the Tianxiu boundary, and its status was extraordinary. Gong Yangqi, the sect master, was the #1 person in the Tianxiu boundary, and his authority was monstrous. But now, he was kneeling on the ground and asking for help. In an instant, Ma Taijin judged that Gong Yangqi must have encountered an extremely difficult problem. Otherwise, why would he kneel directly? While Ma Taijin was thinking, Yu Yunhe couldn't help but ask curiously, what exactly happened? Tell me. Gong Yangqi's face was full of sorrow and resentment. He gnashed his teeth and told them about Lin Sun's appearance, his tyrannical behavior, and his cruel persecution of the Sky Path Sword sect. Crack! After listening, Yu Yunhe smashed the table in front of him and said angrily, What an audacious madman! How dare he force junior sister Xiuqi's brother to kneel? He's simply courting death. Ma Taijin and the other big shots of the Danding Dao sect couldn't help but smile bitterly. They all knew that Yu Yunhe admired Mu Xiuqi and was pursuing him. The reason why Yu Yunhe came to the Tianxiu boundary this time was to see Mu Shiyuan. He wanted to take this opportunity to show off and leave a good impression on Mu Xiuqi. Yu Yunhe looked at Ma Taijin and said, Elder Ma, since we know about this, we have to help. What do you think? Ma Taijin sighed in his heart. Originally, if Gong Yangqi didn't pay an extremely great price, he wouldn't pay any attention to such a matter. The calamity of the Sky Path Sword sect had nothing to do with the Danding Dao sect. However, Yu Yunhe's words made Ma Taijin understand that he had no choice but to help this time. However, he was slightly unwilling to agree just like that. Why? Right at this moment, Gong Yangqi, who was kneeling on the ground, said loudly, Senior, my Sky Path Sword sect is willing to offer 1,000 Dao crystals, 10 10,000-year-old divine herbs, and 3 divine materials of heaven and earth. I only hope that Senior can help and save my Sky Path Sword sect from an abyss of suffering. A bright light flashed in Ma Taijin's eyes, and he pondered for a moment before he said with a solemn expression, Forget it. Yunhe is right. Since we've encountered this matter, we naturally can't stand idly by. His words were sonorous and filled with a strong sense of righteousness. The other big shots of the Danding Dao sect smiled and nodded when they saw this. Annihilating a great saint wasn't difficult for them. Moreover, Gong Yangqi was tactful enough to offer a huge reward, so they couldn't refuse it even if they wanted to. There's no time to lose. Gong Yangqi, lead the way. We'll go settle the score with that madman right now. Let me see who he is to actually dare to be so arrogant. Yu Yunhe stood up with a disdainful expression. It's indeed a little too much. Not only did he kill someone, he even forcefully occupied their abode to cultivate. Such despicable actions are simply infuriating. Ma Taizhen stood up as well and said, Yunhe hates evil. We can't wait any longer. Let's take action immediately and eliminate this madman as soon as possible so that Gong Yangqi can be at ease. Thank you, Senior. Gong Yangqi revealed a grateful expression as he choked with sobs. In reality, his heart was bleeding. The reward he paid had consumed more than half of the Sky Path Sword Sect's savings. Who wouldn't feel the pain? Right, call Mu Shiyuan over. I want him to personally see how that madman who once humiliated and trampled on his dignity dies. Yu Yunhe instructed with a flash in his heart. Ma Taizhen and others couldn't help smiling. At this time, Yu Yunhe didn't forget to express his goodwill to Mu Xiuqi, who was far away in the sect. Gong Yangqi naturally had no objection. Back mountain, in front of the blessed enclave. When Gong Yangqi came here this time, he was already full of complacency. His heart was mixed with excitement and expectation, but he was still very calm. Is Taoism Peer Lin here? He asked in a deep voice. What's the matter? Soon, Lin's figure came out of the abode. His qi was restrained, and there was no fluctuation of his breath. The elephant was invisible, returning to nature. Gong Yangqi took a deep breath and said, Taoism Peer, a master from the Danding Taoism sect came by the boundary ship today and wants to meet you. Lin Sun said with a faint smile, I see. They came at the right time. I'm about to leave by the boundary ship, so I really have to meet them. Gong Yangqi sneered in his heart. You still want to take the boundary ship? I'm afraid you don't have such a life. Right at this moment, Lin Sun suddenly walked forward and patted Gong Yangqi on the shoulder, and he said with a gentle expression, Fellow Taoist, you must have had a very unpleasant time these past few days. But fellow Taoist, you must not do anything stupid. Otherwise, not only will you harm others and yourself, I'm afraid the entire Skysword sect will be implicated. Gong Yangqi felt a chill in his heart, and his body became stiff. How could he not hear the threat in Lin Sun's words? But when he thought of Ma Taizhen and others, Gong Yangqi calmed down a lot and said with a forced smile, Taoism Peer, you must be joking. Lin Sun smiled and said, Where are they? Gong Yangqi pointed to the distant sky. A group of masters from the Danding Taoism sect are drinking and talking in the clouds, appreciating the beauty of the sea of clouds. Lin Sun looked over and sighed. What a good place! Even if there is a battle, it won't affect the snow mountain, and it won't hurt the flowers and grass of the Tianqing sword sect. Gong Yangqi's smile stiffened, and he was surprised and doubtful. Had this boy already been vigilant? Swish! Right at this moment, Lin Sun put his hands behind his back, and his figure floated up into the sky. Young man, don't blame me for being too ruthless. It's you who pushed me too far. Watching Lin Sun leave, Gong Yangqi's eyes flickered and he relaxed. Without delay, he also followed up. He wanted to see how Lin Sun would be executed. In the clouds far away, the sea of clouds was rolling. Ma Taizhen and others stepped on it, their clothes fluttering in the wind like a group of immortals. Mu Shiyuan was also among them. He looked excited, unable to conceal the excitement in his heart. When he heard that Ma Taizhen and the other masters of the Danding Taoism sect were going to kill Lin Sun, he was so happy that he almost jumped up. It's time to wash away the humiliation I've suffered. That bitch Nanxiu and the Muzang tribe behind her can't escape. Mu Shiyuan secretly gritted his teeth. These days, he almost couldn't eat or sleep in peace. Whenever he thought of the scenes where he was forced to kneel down, he felt as if his heart was being twisted by a knife. But from today onwards, all of this would vanish into thin air. They're coming. Ma Taizhen's eyes were like lightning as he looked into the distance. Almost at the same time, Yu Yunhe and the other masters of the Danding Taoism sect also looked over. In the distant sky, they saw a figure stepping on the sea of clouds, his clothes fluttering in the wind and his black hair flying. It was Lin Sun. Chapter 1867. He's that madman? Why does he look so ordinary? Yu Yunhe showed a surprised expression. Yunhe, don't be careless. There's no shortage of ruthless people who are good at concealing their aura. They deliberately make others unable to see through them in order to achieve the purpose of surprise. Ma Taijin said indifferently. Yu Yunhe sneered. As long as you have a great background and great spirit, you have the momentum of arrogance and confidence. Why do you need to hide? You're too hypocritical. With that, he pointed to Lin Sun in the distance. Is it you who forced Mu Shiyuan to kneel? How dare you? His words were not polite at all, as if he was reprimanding a servant. Lin Sun stopped 3,000 feet away, ignoring Yu Yunhe's provocation. He glanced at the people present and finally looked at Ma Taijin, saying, Sure enough, this meeting may be very unpleasant. Bastard! Didn't you hear what I said? Yu Yunhe's face darkened. 3 slaps, I'll record it. Lin Sun glanced at him, as if he was looking at a clown. Yu Yunhe was furious. Just as he was about to say something, he was stopped by Ma Taijin. Young man, since you have guessed the purpose of our waiting here, you should understand the situation now, right? Ma Taijin's bearing was dignified and dignified. His entire body exuded the sacred aura of a monarch. My Pill Cauldron Dao sect is not an indiscriminate sect. Tell me your name and origin, and this king may give you a chance to redeem yourself. He couldn't see through Lin Sun's details. Lin Sun was too calm. Even in the face of so many people, he was not afraid at all. This could only prove that he was either fearless or had a great origin. Redeem myself, Lin Sun repeated in his mouth and suddenly smiled. No need to be so troublesome. It's just a fight. Just do it directly. Arrogant. Yu Yunhe was in a very bad mood. This guy who came out of nowhere was actually so impervious to them, and he was talking and laughing as if nothing had happened. This made him feel very uncomfortable. Mu Shiyuan next to him was also very uncomfortable. These were all masters of Danding sect. Didn't this guy know what respect was? Arrogant? Haha. Lin Sun sneered. Back then in the Kunlun ruins, he had killed countless peerless figures from the 6 great Dao courts and the 10 great war clans, such as Yan Chunjun, Wen Qingxue, Kuan Jilin, Su Ling Kuan, and so on. Compared to him, this fellow in front of him was too inferior. You actually dare to mock me? Yu Yunhe's face was filled with disbelief. He felt that this was ridiculous. Did this guy not know how to spell the word death? Wasn't this a little too brainless? If it was a normal person, who would dare to be so disrespectful to him in the many small worlds that the Du world covered? Lin Sun said, You're not stupid. You can see that I'm laughing at you. It's rare. Yu Yunhe was so angry that his face turned green. Ma Taijin couldn't help but frown as he said, Young man, if we fight, I'm afraid you'll lose your life today. I gave you a chance because it wasn't easy for you to cultivate, but you didn't cherish it. Could it be that you really think I'm easy to talk to? Lin Sun withdrew the smile on his face and said coldly with his black eyes, Old man, you talk too much nonsense. These words enraged all the great figures of the Pill Cauldron Dao sect. Boom! Ma Tai Lai's body surged with horrible divine power. Every inch of his skin was flowing with horrible light, illuminating the 9 heavens and 10 lands. He was like a god descending to the world, which shocked the world. In the distant snowy mountain, Gong Yangqi looked excited and murmured excitedly, It's finally time to fight. This young man will definitely die today. Behind him, a group of great figures and countless descendants of the Heavenly Line's swordsmanship sect had gathered and were watching from a distance. When they saw this scene, they also showed a look of expectation. This ferocious and overbearing guy was finally going to be punished. Under the snowy mountain, in the city, countless cultivators were also alarmed at this moment. They all looked at the distant clouds. God! Are those great figures of the Pill Cauldron Tao sect going to kill that young man? I knew that the Heavenly Line's swordsmanship sect couldn't swallow their anger. That young man's retribution has come. This is the price of being fierce. How can anyone offend the Heavenly Line's swordsmanship sect casually? The sound of discussion and uproar sounded like a tsunami. Oh no! Nan Lapring and other strong people of the Muzang tribe also noticed this scene. They were all shocked and their souls almost jumped out of their bodies. Before, they thought that the Muzang tribe could also benefit from Nan Chio's support with Lin Sun. But now, the great figures of the Pill Cauldron Tao sect actually took action. The Pill Cauldron Tao sect was an ancient orthodoxy that could be considered a colossal figure in the Diu world. Compared to it, the Mulberry tribe was simply like an ant. If Lin Sun died, how could the Heavenly Line's swordsmanship sect, which had been humiliated and suppressed by him, spare the Muzang tribe? How could Mu Shiyuan let Nan Chio go? Thinking of this, Nan Lapring and others' hearts sank to the bottom. Their faces were ashen, and their hands and feet were cold. Life was unpredictable. Nan Chio pursed her lips and didn't say anything. She had already known that Mu Shiyuan had a sister who cultivated in the Pill Cauldron Tao sect. This action against Lin Sun was very likely to be related to this. She murmured in her heart. Who could have thought that he could suppress the Heavenly Line's swordsmanship sect by himself? Now, will a similar scene play out? Elder Ma, please calm down. It's just a young man. You don't need to bother yourself. Let me do it. On the sea of clouds, a middle-aged man in a splendid robe stood up with a smile. His name was Zhu Tsang, and he was a deacon of the Pill Cauldron Tao sect. At the same time, he was also a peak great saint who had lived for thousands of years. Brother Zhu Tsang, don't worry. It's easy to kill such a madman, but it's not enough to vent your anger. Let me capture him and hand him over to Yunhe. It's better to let him vent his anger. A charming woman in green stood out, smiling sweetly. Why go through so much trouble? Why don't you just leave it to me? Yunhe said with a gloomy look. Haha, Yunhe, who are you? How can you condescend to do such a small thing? Someone laughed. During their conversation, they seemed to regard Lin Sun as a prey to be slaughtered. They were scrambling to kill him. Mu Shiyuan was fascinated by Lin Sun's relaxed attitude. This was the demeanor of a master he yearned for. But at this moment, Lin Sun suddenly laughed. I've seen people die, but I've never seen people scrambling to die. Why don't you all come at me together? The crowd fell silent. The big shots of the Pill Cauldron Tao sect who were scrambling to kill Lin Sun were all enraged by this sentence. You're courting death. Zhu Tsang, who was wearing a high hat and a wide belt, attacked without hesitation. Boom! His figure bloomed with great light like an erupting volcano. He moved out of thin air and appeared in front of Lin Sun in the next moment. He punched at Lin Sun's head. The terrifying fist energy was like a dazzling sun, surging with the dazzling power of the laws. A great saint was immeasurably large. A casual strike had the power to burn mountains and boil seas. The nearby sea of clouds evaporated in an instant and the void collapsed. It was completely absorbed by the power of Zhu Tsang's fist. Seeing this in the distance, Gong Yangqi couldn't help but gasp. He had to admit that the peak great saint of the Pill Cauldron Tao sect was extraordinary. Lin Sun's eyes were deep. Without moving, he casually stretched out his right hand. It seemed slow, but inconceivably, he grabbed the incoming fist before it could. There was no sound of collision. Silently, Zhu Tsang's fist was firmly held. No matter how the qi around him rumbled, he couldn't move an inch. This strange scene caused everyone to be stunned. Zhu Tsang's expression changed drastically. It was as if his punch had landed on an immovable barrier. All of his power was firmly restrained and suppressed, and he couldn't withdraw. Too weak, Lin Sun sighed softly. He exerted force with his palm and fingers. Boom! A terrifying and irresistible power flowed through Zhu Tsang's fist, arms, and into every part of his body as if it was crushing dry weeds. "No!" Zhu Tsang screamed in horror. The next moment, his fist, arm, and body exploded like a dense cluster of firecrackers. A rain of blood splattered everywhere. The surrounding void trembled and was soaked in scarlet blood. There was dead silence. With one blow, Zhu Tsang, a great saint of the Pill Cauldron Tao sect, was killed on the spot like an ant. That domineering and bloody scene made Ma Taizhen and the others change their expressions. They were shocked and in disbelief. On the snowy holy mountain, Gong Yangqi's expression froze. He was so shocked that his scalp went numb. That was a great saint, not a cabbage. How could he be killed just like that? The city at the foot of the mountain also fell into a dead silence. Countless cultivators were dumbfounded. The first one. Lin Sun looked at Ma Taizhen and the others in the distance. "Listen to my advice. You'd better come together." His indifferent voice drifted between heaven and earth. No one dared to say that Lin Sun was arrogant. The beautiful woman in green and several others looked at each other and attacked together without hesitation. Zhu Tsang's death made them realize how terrifying their opponent was. Whoosh! A beautiful flying sword swept out from the void. It was green and lustrous like a divine rainbow. The beautiful woman in green was a great saint sword practitioner. At the same time, a golden spear, a blood-red scimitar, and a long whip like a silver snake also attacked. The treasure light above the clouds rumbled, and the sound of Tao was endless. The terrifying aura released made the world dim and wail. A total of 4 great figures from the Pill Cauldron Tao sect attacked together. Each of them did not hold back and attacked with all their strength. The heavenly curve world was only a small world, and the strongest Gong Yangqi was only in existence who had barely reached the peak of the great sage realm. How could he have ever seen such a shocking battle? That boundlessly terrifying scene caused all of them to be shocked on the spot, and they lost control of their minds. Lin Sun also moved. Whoosh! His figure suddenly disappeared. The next moment, accompanied by an ear-piercing collision sound, the green flying sword was sent flying by Lin Sun's punch and broke in the void with a bang. Chapter 1868. His slender and fair index finger was sparkling, translucent, and clean, without the slightest aura. However, in the eyes of the green-clothed beauty, such a finger seemed to blot out the sky and cover the sun. It enveloped all directions, giving her the feeling that she couldn't avoid it. "It's over." Just as this thought emerged in her mind, poof! A faint finger mark appeared between her eyebrows, and then a bloody hole cracked open. At the moment of her death, the green-clothed beauty couldn't figure out exactly what kind of terrifying figure this young man was, and why his strength was so heaven-defying. With a bang, her corpse fell from the sky. The second one. At this moment, Lin Sun's figure had already disappeared, and he was charging towards the others. Boom! A golden spear stabbed towards Lin Sun, setting off a storm that covered the sky, and the sharp tip of the spear was aimed straight at Lin Sun's throat. Lin Sun stretched out his hand, grabbed the spear, and swung it. The big shot holding the spear was directly sent flying like a kite with a broken string. Swoosh! Lin Sun threw the spear that he had seized. Under the horrified gazes of the crowd, the big shot who was sent flying was directly pierced by his own spear. Blood splattered, and the man lowered his head to look at the spear that pierced his heart, and his face was filled with terror and confusion. Was he still human? The third one. Lin Sun's figure flickered, and he pounced towards another opponent. His speed was too fast, and his strength was too terrifying. He completely crushed his opponents, and up until now, he had already killed 3 opponents in just a few short breaths. His invincible and domineering style caused the world to fall silent, and everyone was shocked and completely stunned. Previously, when they saw the big shots of the Danding Dao sect attack, everyone thought that Lin Sun would undoubtedly die. After all, in the hearts of all the cultivators in the Tianxu world, the Danding Dao sect was like a high and mighty immortal sect that was omnipotent. But when the battle really happened, everyone was shocked to discover that the big shots of the Danding Dao sect, whom they regarded as inviolable, were killed like chickens and dogs before Lin Sun. That shocking bloody scene had completely subverted their understanding of the world. Boom! High up in the sky, Lin Sun stared at the big shot holding the blood-colored scimitar, and his fists were like lightning with unparalleled momentum. "Stop!" Ma Taijin shouted explosively from afar, and his expression was incomparably livid. In a short period of a few breaths of time, numerous people had perished. Such a scene caused him to feel disbelief, and a trace of daze appeared in his mind. At this moment, when he sobered up, Ma Taichin was completely unable to remain calm. Bang! Unfortunately, Lin Sun turned a deaf ear to it. He developed the Tao in his fist and integrated the law into the momentum. A simple punch had the courage to destroy the universe, mountains and rivers. In an instant, the blood-colored machete was smashed and exploded. The chest of the owner of the scimitar caved in, and a bowl-sized bloody hole was created by the fist force. "The fourth one," Lin Sun said indifferently. His whole body was clean and spotless, but at this time, in the eyes of the crowd, he was like an invincible devil. "How is this possible? How is this possible?" On the Snow Melody Divine Mountain, Gong Yangqi was in a daze. The experts of the Skyway Sword sect were all stunned. Yu Yunhe opened his mouth wide, his pupils dilated, and his body trembled in fear. As for Mu Shiyuan, he was in an even worse state. His face turned pale, his lips trembled, and his soul almost left his body. He was just a king realm cultivator. When had he seen such a bloody battle between peerless great sages? In the city, the minds of countless cultivators went blank, and they couldn't recover from their shock for a long time. What was a god? They didn't know. But at this moment, in their eyes, Lin Sun, who stood high in the sky, was like a god. Vile spawn! Ma Taichin was completely infuriated. He stretched out his hand and clenched the void. Buzz! The boundless power of laws spread out and covered the sky. In an instant, a world of fiery red magma appeared at the top of the clouds, and it emitted a terrifying aura that could incinerate the world. Tao Realm. Anyone who stepped into the King Realm of Sages could forge the power of the laws of the Great Tao and fuse it into a terrifying Tao Realm. It was called the Tao Realm. Where the Tao Realm covered, a King Realm of Sages was a supreme existence. This was the symbol of a King Realm of Sages, and it was also the symbol of power that was respectfully called King. At this moment, what Ma Taichin displayed was the Tao Realm that he had tempered for countless years, Divine Flame Space Ember. In this Tao Realm, the distribution of the laws of fire was like a world of flames. If one was trapped in it, their skin would be torn and their flesh would be torn apart. It was extremely terrifying. Gosh! Is this the legendary power of the Tao Realm? The means of a King Realm of Sages are really incredible. Countless exclamations, shock and uproar sounded. As soon as Ma Taichin made his move, he immediately became the focus of attention. The demeanor of a King Realm of Sages was admirable to countless people. As expected, Lin Sun was trapped in the Tao Realm. The power of the laws of the Great Tao was far beyond what he could control at his current realm. Of course, if he struggled, the result was bound to be different. In short, this was the first King Realm of Sages that Lin Sun had met since he started cultivating. It was also the first time that he was suppressed by the power of the Tao Realm. He was very curious about the power of the laws of the Great Tao. Therefore, he did not struggle. Ha ha ha, no matter how fierce he is definitely no match for the elder. Yu Yunhe laughed. The anger, fear, and coldness in his heart were swept away. He laughed as if he was venting his emotions, and his voice shook the sky. In the distance, Gong Yangqi and others on the Snow Sound Mountain were also relieved. They had finally succeeded. The bloody means that Lin Sun had shown just now had really frightened them. Now that Lin Sun was trapped in the Tao Realm, he was doomed to die. Boom! The sea of fire was boiling, and the endless power of the laws of the great Tao turned into torrential tongues of fire. The scorching aura of destruction that could melt everything raged. This was divine flame space ashes, Ma Taichen's Tao realm. Standing in it, Lin soon only felt that he was separated from the world. It was as if he had been cut off from the outside world, and he could no longer sense the aura of the great Tao. What a familiar feeling! Lin soon thought of the past 6 years when he was trapped in the empty starry sky. It was surprisingly similar to the current situation. It was as if they were exiled by the great Tao, unable to sense the laws of heaven and earth. Young man, with the foundation and cultivation you have shown, you are definitely not an ordinary person. Now that you are trapped in my Tao realm, do you still intend to resist stubbornly? In the world of fire, Ma Taichen's figure emerged. He was majestic and disdainful. Endless flames rushed out of his body like a god born from fire, and his aura was raging and terrifying. Trapped? Lin Sun sneered. Old man, you can use all your strength. I'd like to see what your so-called Tao realm can do to me. Humph! Ma Taichen snorted. The law of fire suddenly rushed up and turned into orderly swords, sabers, and spears, sweeping from the sky and the ground in all directions. The dazzling flames and the destructive aura intertwined, producing a power that was enough to make most great sages in the world despair. Because this was the power of the Tao realm. In this Tao realm, Ma Taichen was the god, the only master, and he controlled life and death. Boom! Lin Sun's body was shining. It seemed that a big abyss was rising up, deep and dark, like a black hole quietly opening in the starry sky. At the same time, he stepped forward and punched. Terrible roars and collisions sounded. The sabers, spears, swords, and halberds formed by the law of fire were smashed by Lin Sun at this moment. The sky was full of fire splashing. No matter how terrible the attack was, it couldn't get close to Lin Sun. Ma Taichen's pupil shrank and then he sneered. It's useless. Within this seat's domain, energy is endless and endless. How long can you struggle for? Boom. His voice hadn't finished resounding through the air when the energy of the laws in this domain changed once more. The rain of flames that covered the sky condensed into a blazing divine seal of flames that was filled with a raging and violent aura of incineration. It rumbled as it pressed down, and the energy it created was capable of instantly transforming everything into ash and evaporation. Lin Sun's black eyes showed a touch of surprise, and he said, "That's more like it." He took a deep breath, and the pores all over his body shook. Suddenly, endless Taishian sword chi flew out, condensed into earth evil sword mountains, and rose up from the ground. An earth-shattering roar sounded. Finally, the divine seal of fire was smashed, turned into the power of the law, and dissipated. Look, it's just SOSO. Lin Sun looked at Ma Taichen in the distance and chuckled. If I'm right, you haven't set foot on the ultimate path of cultivation in the Saint King realm, and the power of the Tao realm you control is not top-notch. Otherwise, you won't be so weak. Ma Taichen's face darkened upon hearing those words. Go to hell. He shouted and activated the power of the Tao realm with all his strength. For a time, all kinds of strange phenomena appeared, and many attacks full of monstrous killing intent emerged, as if gathering the power of a world to kill Lin Sun. That kind of power was boundlessly terrifying. Lin Sun didn't take it lightly, but he didn't show any signs of being in a mess. While resisting, he sensed the subtle changes of the power of the Tao realm. He looked very calm. Ma Taichen was shocked and angry, and he couldn't believe his eyes. If it were other great saints, they would be seriously injured, or even wiped out, and their souls would be destroyed, even if they could withstand it. But from beginning to end, Lin Sun was in a desperate situation, as if he was walking on the flat ground. He was free and unharmed. Where on earth did this guy come from? Not to mention the small Tianxu world, even in the Du world, there seems to be no such a heaven-defying character like him. Ma Taichen became more and more frightened as he fought, and his expression kept changing. A peerless great sage wasn't afraid of his Tao domain. Who would believe it if word of this got out? In any case, I can't let him live. Ma Taichen gritted his teeth, and his killing intent surged in his heart. If it was at the beginning, he might choose to reconcile, but now it was completely different. Lin Sun had killed several deacons of Danding Taoism sect, and this hatred was destined to be irreconcilable. Boom! The sea of fire was surging and overturning. Ma Taichen was desperate to fight with all his strength, and his face was full of undisguised killing intent. But at this moment Lin Sun sighed softly. After all, it's still disappointing. Before his voice died away, Ma Taichen, who was in the attack of the fire, raised his head slightly. There was an inexplicable cold light flowing in his abyss-like black eyes, and he gently spat out a word. Break. Chapter 1869. Lin Sun stretched out his body, and his spirit rose to the extreme in an instant. He raised his fist and punched towards the sky. At this moment, he was like a peerless demon. His figure was magnificent, and his invincible demeanor made Ma Taichen in the distance fall into a trance. Boom! Following that, a hole was blasted in the sky of the divine flame world, and the violent power of the law of fire raged like a torrent of flames. This, Ma Taichen looked incredulous. His figure shook and he coughed up a mouthful of blood. What happened? Since Lin Sun was trapped in the Tao field, the clouds covered by flames had become the focus of all the people present. But as time went by, there was no movement from there for a long time, which made many practitioners a little impatient. What else can happen? That audacious bastard must die. Yu Yunhe gritted his teeth and shouted. How many peerless great saints in this world could resist the Tao field? The king of sages is far above the great saints. Trapped in it, there is no way out. On the top of Shualu Mountain, Gong Yangqi said in a low voice. Everyone around him nodded secretly. For the practitioners of Tianxu realm, the peerless great saint was already the top existence in the world, and the king of sages, it was just a legend. No one would believe that anyone in this world could survive from the hands of a king of sages. In the city, countless practitioners held their breath and were extremely nervous. Especially Nan Laping and other experts of the Mulberry tribe, their hearts were in their throat. If Lin Sun died, what awaited them would be an unimaginable nightmare. Boom! At this moment, an earth-shattering sound rang out, like a war drum beaten by a deity, or a corner of the sky being broken. Under all eyes, a hole was broken in the divine flame world, and the blazing divine flame erupted like a volcano, sweeping in all directions. At the same time, a figure bathed in the divine flame rose up. His whole body was bright and radiant, and the power he emitted shook the whole world. Yu Yunhe, who had been waiting anxiously for a long time, shouted excitedly before he could see clearly, "Awesome! Congratulations to Elder Ma for killing this bastard!" The figure bathed in divine radiance laughed. What a simple-minded fool! His voice drifted through the heavens and the earth, and it caused the surroundings to go silent. After that, everyone finally saw clearly that the mighty figure that was covered in divine radiance was surprisingly Lin Sun, who they thought would surely die. In an instant, all of them looked as if they'd seen a ghost, and their eyeballs almost fell out of their sockets. How could this be possible? You, why aren't you dead? Yu Yunhe felt as if he had been struck by lightning, his mind going blank as he cried out involuntarily. The world of fire collapsed and the glow converged. Lin Sun's figure floated in the clouds, his clothes fluttering, and his eyes looking into the distance. Ma Taichen's figure appeared, but his expression was one of shock, fury, and astonishment, and he was still in disbelief. An uproar erupted in the surroundings when they witnessed this. Even the Tao domain of a sage monarch failed to kill Lin Sun. This was undoubtedly too inconceivable. At the peak of the snow-sound divine mountain, Gong Yangqi felt his vision darken. His chest tightened, and he had the urge to cough up blood. The thing he had been looking forward to for a long time had actually ended like this. This was a huge blow to him. "Old man, are you going to lower your head on your own, or do you want me to suppress you personally?" Lin Sun spoke, his voice rumbling through the clouds. "Arrogant!" Ma Taizhen roared as he took out a silver spear and charged through the air. He was a sage monarch after all, and the power and laws he controlled far surpassed that of a sage monarch. How could he be willing to admit defeat just like that? Boom! The shadow of the spear flickered, covering the sky. Lin Sun no longer hesitated. He stepped forward with a cold gaze and suddenly disappeared. In the next moment, he punched the tip of the silver spear. It was a head-on collision, but Lin Sun's fist force actually bent the spear, releasing a terrifying force. Bang! The silver spear flew out of his hand, and Ma Taizhen seemed to have suffered a backlash as his body staggered back over 30 meters in the air. He had suppressed a sage monarch with a single strike. "Even if it was me 6 years ago, killing you would be as easy as flipping my hand." Lin Sun said something that was inexplicable to the others. However, if Hua Xingli, Zhuan Yuheng, and the other peerless figures who had entered the Kunlun ruins were here, they might understand the meaning behind his words. Killing a sage monarch who had yet to step foot into the apex was indeed not difficult for Lin Sun 6 years ago. Moreover, he was completely different from 6 years ago. Kill! Ma Taizhen's hair was disheveled, and he seemed to have gone mad. As a great figure of the Pill Cauldron Dao sect, a sage monarch whose name shook the Diu world, he was actually suppressed by a junior in front of everyone. This humiliation made him lose face. Lin Sun pressed out with his palm. Boom! The palm print that seemed to cover the sky emitted a waterfall of the great Dao energy. The moment it appeared, it caused the entire world to wail as if it was submitting. On the other hand, Ma Taizhen's entire body was suppressed by the palm print. His body felt as if it was being suppressed by an ancient divine mountain. Blood flowed from his 7 orifices, and all the bones in his body were about to break. Bang! 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 His body was suppressed to the point of sinking continuously. The surrounding space collapsed and exploded without end. No matter how he roared or struggled, it was useless. In the end, the ground cracked, and a huge ravine in the shape of a palm print was formed by the terrifying palm force. Ma Taizhen was pressed down within it. His face was covered in dirt, and his body was covered in blood. He could no longer stand up. Smoke and dust filled the air, and the entire place was deathly silent. At this moment, all the cultivators who witnessed this scene felt like ants facing a god. They were powerless and tiny like dust. Even a sage monarch could not withstand a single blow from Lin Sun. As a result, the entire world was enveloped in a terrifying silence. Only Lin Sun stood towering above the clouds like an immortal that had descended into the world. His disdain and majesty were unparalleled. Why? After a long time, Yu Yunhe finally recovered from his shock and muttered involuntarily. His face was pale and extremely unsightly. Lin Sun said with a smile, "Don't be afraid, big fool. I'll borrow your border ship to leave. I won't kill you, but before that, you'd better behave yourself." He reached out a hand and confined Yu Yunhe from afar, suppressing him. Plop! At the same time, Mu Shiyuan, who was standing beside Yu Yunhe, rolled his eyes and fainted out of fear, falling from the void. This was the second time he had fainted. The first time was when he was suppressed by Lin Sun to kneel on the ground. He was so angry that he passed out. Lin Sun looked at Mu Shiyuan and lost his interest in killing him. Mu Shiyuan's Taoist heart had been cracked and broken. Even if he woke up, there was no hope for him to cultivate in this life. He was doomed to be gloomy and degenerate. Lin Sun looked at the Shuelua mountain in the distance. At this moment, Gong Yangqi, who had already lost his mind and felt cold all over, knelt on the ground and begged for mercy in a trembling voice. "We are ignorant and have no intention of offending you. please spare our lives." Behind him, the big shots of Tianqing swordsmanship sect also knelt on the ground in a chaotic sound, which was quite spectacular. In the past, each of them was respected like a king when they went out in the Tianxu world. But now they were just a group of poor people kneeling on the ground and begging for mercy. "Taoist peer, I have warned you earlier, but you are so stubborn. Why bother?" Lin Sun sighed. Gong Yangqi felt bitter in his heart. He suddenly raised his hand and slapped his cheek hard, making a crisp sound. "I'm confused, I'm stupid." A headmaster who was in charge of an orthodoxy was so humble and slapping himself. That scene surprised Lin Sun. "You can avoid death, but you can't escape punishment. Considering your ignorance, I'll leave you a way to live." Whoosh! Lin Sun raised his hand and drew a line with his finger. A stream of sword chi rose and cut down across the sky. Under countless horrified gazes, the Xuelua mountain, known as the first spiritual place in the Tianxu world, was cut into two. The destruction of this mountain was equivalent to the destruction of the foundation of Tianqing swordsmanship sect. The price paid was enough to make all the practitioners in the world feel bitterly disappointed. Everyone knew that even if all the people of Tianqing swordsmanship sect survived, without the Xuelua mountain, Tianqing swordsmanship sect was destined to be removed from the first force in the Tianxu world. Gong Yangqi and the others were pale, but no one dared to say anything. "Nan Xiu, are you willing to leave this world with me?" Lin Sun asked, looking down at the city below. Nan Leiping and other people of the Muzang tribe suddenly became the focus of the whole city, and Nan Xiu naturally became the focus of attention. Many people couldn't help but feel jealous and envious. Lin Sun alone suppressed Tianqing swordsmanship sect and defeated all the big shots from Danding Taoism sect. If they could follow him and leave together, they wouldn't have to worry about the future. Nan Xiu hesitated. "Silly girl, quickly agree." Nan Leiping was extremely anxious. Nan Xiu whispered, "Ninth uncle, I'm worried that there will be people who will harm our Muzang tribe after we leave." Lin Sun immediately understood that this girl was worried that other forces in the Tianxu world would no longer have scruples after he left and would harm the Muzang tribe. Lin Sun looked at Gong Yangqi and said, "Taoism peer, do you think there will be any unexpected disturbances in the Muzang tribe in the future?" Gong Yangqi was stunned and quickly shook his head. "Senior, don't worry. As long as I'm here, I won't let anyone bully the Muzang tribe." Lin Sun snapped his fingers, and a secret method flowed into Gong Yangqi's eyebrows. "This is a method to temper the Taoist root, which is enough to fix the problem of your lack of cultivation. It's not impossible for you to step into the Saint King realm in the future." Gong Yangqi was stunned at first, and then an indescribable ecstasy surged in his heart. He bowed his head and said, "Senior, don't worry. The affairs of the Muzang tribe are my affairs." They talked by voice transmission, so outsiders didn't know that the headmaster of Tianqing swordsmanship sect had been bought by Lin Sun. When Nan Xiu learned of Lin Sun's arrangement, she also agreed to leave with Lin Sun without hesitation. Lin Sun felt much more relaxed. For him, the Tianxu world was just a small world after all, and there was no place worth staying here. His cultivation was destined not to be fettered here. Lin Sun didn't want to delay the world any longer, so he decided to leave by ship today. There are two other things. Firstly, I've written an article on Goldfish's official account to summarize the clues of the plot of the Starry Sky Ancient Path that I've foreshadowed in the previous chapter. Second, when Goldfish releases the royalties this month, I'll send a big red envelope to compensate you for the loss of the last subscription. Chapter 1870. With a roar, the boundary ship, which was as large as a floating land, broke through the air, tore the clouds, and rushed out of the sky. "Let's go!" On the ground, countless practitioners in the Tianxu world looked at this scene, and their hearts were in turmoil. Lin Daoyuan, this mysterious young man, like a comet, cut through the sky of the Tianxu world, making the world tremble. Everyone knew that this name was destined to be remembered in the history of the Tianxu world like a brand. Let's go. Nan Leiping let out a long breath. He knew that when Nan Qiu followed Lin Sun, the fate of the Muzang tribe had been quietly changed. In the future, even if the Muzang tribe was extremely weak, as long as Nan Qiu was there would be hope for them to rise again. On the boundary ship there were pavilions, terraces, small bridges, and flowing water. It covered a large area. Standing on it was like standing in a small city. At the core of the realm ship was a Tao marking restriction formation that could be said to be vast. It was like a surging furnace that seethed and circulated, and it emanated powerful and surging energy that urged the realm ship to tear through the sky. In the center of the boundary ship, there was a small hill of Taoist crystals. These were all high-grade Taoist crystals, which were the source of power for the boundary ship to fly. At this time, Lin Sun stood in front of this Taoist forbidden formation, holding a round bronze plate in his hand, which was engraved with flowers, birds, insects, and fish, and reflected a starry sky chart. This was a chart leading to the Dayu world. This boundary ship is indeed not owned by ordinary forces. After a while, Lin Sun withdrew his gaze and made a rough judgment. For a boundary ship like this, there were tens of thousands of kinds of divine materials needed for its casting, which amounted to hundreds of thousands of tons. Besides this, countless Tao marking restriction formations had to be inscribed on the inside and outside of the vessel, and even a Tao marking master with deep attainments would at least require over a year of time to complete such a complicated and tedious task. After the boundary ship was cast successfully, every flight would need a large number of Taoist crystals, which cost a lot. Ordinary forces could not bear such consumption at all. Taoist crystals, also known as precious crystals of the Great Way, contained rich and pure divine spiritual qi, which was a necessity for the cultivation of the Great Saint realm. The value of a thumb-sized Tao crystal could be said to be astonishing. 10 of these Tao crystals could be exchanged for a precious divine medicine. Every time the realm ship flew, it would consume at least 1,000 Tao crystals. If the journey was long, the amount of Tao crystals consumed would only be even more shocking. For example, flying from the heavenly melody realm to the Diu realm would cost 4,000 high-grade Tao crystals. You drove the realm ship and paid such a huge price just to come to a small place like the heavenly melody realm to recruit disciples? Asked Lin Sun. Standing next to him was a middle-aged man in a gray robe named Fu Tong. Like Ma Taizhen and Yu Yunhe, he was lucky enough to survive Lin Sun's attack in the Tianxu realm. Of course not. Fu Tong's expression was stiff, and he seemed to have accepted his fate as he said, "Before coming to the heavenly melody world, we'd already been to the other 9 small worlds and gathered 4,000 kilograms of the Cloudweave world's specialty, jade spiral golden thread, 150 kilograms of the Jade Cloud world's specialty, wind-supporting chalcedony, and 50 pairs of the Fallen Sky world's specialty, dark pheasant feathers." He reported the names of various divine materials, divine medicines, and mineral resources. Finally, he said, "These goods can be sold at a sky-high price of 10 times or even 100 times the price in the Diu realm. Compared with them, the Tao crystals consumed by the realm ship are just a drop in the bucket." Speaking of this, Fu Tong looked a little complicated. "Originally, we came to the heavenly melody world to collect a batch of divine medicine called purple beetle grass, but—" He didn't finish his words, but his meaning was clear. Lin Sun said with a faint smile, "So, you're blaming me for ruining your big business?" Fu Tong shook his head quickly and denied it. Lin Sun didn't care about it. Only now did he understand the value of the realm ship. On the ancient way of Starry Sky, controlling the realm ship was equivalent to controlling the means to travel in the starry sky and go to other worlds. Through the means of trade, one could transport materials from different worlds and gain unimaginable wealth. The ancient way of Starry Sky was extremely vast, and all the worlds in the world were in it. The Diu realm alone controlled more than a dozen small worlds like the heavenly melody world. With endless wealth, it was hard for a sect not to flourish. Now Lin soon knew that the starry sky was full of unimaginable dangers and disasters. Almost no one under the Emperor realm dared to fly in it without permission. The realm ship became a tool for practitioners in different worlds to travel in the starry sky. However, even the realm ship could only fly according to the fixed starry sky channel. If it deviated from the channel, it was very easy to get lost and suffer in the starry sky. Even when flying on the fixed starry sky channel, one would often encounter all kinds of dangers, such as the sudden appearance of the starry sky turbulence and the alien beasts in the channel. It seems that I need to get a realm ship in the future, Lin soon pondered. Without the realm ship, one would lose the power to travel in the ancient way of starry sky. Once he was trapped in a world, it would be very difficult to leave. Boom! Suddenly, the realm ship under his feet shook and rushed into the starry sky of the universe. Lin soon suddenly looked up and saw billions of shining stars. The boundless Milky Way was flowing, and the nebula was circulating. It was magnificent and magnificent. Occasionally, a group of gorgeous comets could be seen whistling, like fireworks blooming in the starry sky. It was so beautiful that it was amazing. This was the real ancient way of starry sky. Lin soon sighed with emotion in his heart. Taoism Peer, I want to know something from you. In an antique palace on the realm ship, Lin soon sat on the ground and looked at Ma Taijin not far away. The sage king from Danding Taoism sect was livid at the moment, and his eyes were full of deep hatred. He didn't say a word. Lin soon smiled and said, "If you don't cooperate, I will destroy your cultivation and throw you out of this realm ship." Ma Taijin stiffened and said coldly, "You can try." Lin Sun was not a person who liked to talk nonsense. He immediately stood up and came in front of Ma Taijin. He looked down at him and said, "If you die, there's still Yu Yunhe and Fu Tong. Even if they don't cooperate like you, I have my ways to find out what I want to know when we arrive at the Diu world. Now, are you sure you want to continue resisting?" His voice was calm, but it made Ma Taijin shudder. After a moment of silence, he finally nodded with difficulty. "I can give you dignity, but you have to cooperate with me." Lin Sun walked back to his seat and said casually, "First question, where is the Xuanji Taoism sect?" "The Xuanji Taoism sect?" Ma Taijin glanced at Lin Sun and said, "The central starfield, the Hong Meng world, is the real core area of the ancient way of starry sky. The top forces of the world, such as the 6 major Dao courts and the 10 war clans, are all there. The ancient way of starry sky was vast and boundless. However, only the central starfield was regarded as the most ancient and prosperous cultivation holy land of the ancient way of starry sky. It had existed for a long time, and the Great Way was eternal and brilliant. The Hong Meng world was located in the central starfield, which was also called the first big world in the starry sky. Outside the central starfield, the 9 big worlds and the 33 big worlds were the most famous. For example, the Diu world was located in the Ziheng starfield, one of the 9 big worlds. It was one of the many big worlds in this starfield. Knowing this, Lin Sun was shocked. How big was the ancient way of starry sky? In the past, he only had a vague idea. Now he knew how vast the ancient way of starry sky was. Below the Diu world, there were more than 10 small worlds. But the Diu world was just one of the many big worlds in the Ziheng starfield, and the Ziwei starfield was one of the 9 big worlds. This meant that if Lin Sun wanted to go to the Xuanji Taoism sect in the future, he had to leave the Diu world and the Ziheng starfield first, and then cross the starry sky to arrive at the central starfield. Only then could he enter the Hong Meng world, where the Xuanji Taoism sect was located. It was foreseeable that this was destined to be an unimaginable journey. Second question, where is the ancestral land of the true dragon? Asked Lin Sun. Ma Taijin's pupils constricted as he said, the true dragon lineage is one of the most mysterious and ancient clans in the starry sky. According to legend, the place where this clan resides is called the True Dragon World. However, only a very few ancient sects know exactly where this world is located. Lin Sun frowned and asked, "Does anyone in the Dew world know anything about the True Dragon World?" Ma Taizhen shook his head. "Let alone the Dew world, I'm afraid that no one in the entire Ziheng starfield knows about it. If you want to inquire about the True Dragon World, you can only go to the Hong Meng world in the central starfield." Lin Sun was surprised. He did not expect the true dragon bloodline to be so mysterious. He thought for a while and said, "Third question, do you know about the ancient Wasteland Fighting League?" When the young man with golden cicada took Zhao Jingshuan's parents and some horrible creatures to the ancient way of starry sky, he told Lin Sun about the ancient Wasteland Fighting League. Ma Taizhen was stunned and shook his head. "There are so many forces on the ancient way of starry sky. I have cultivated in the Dew world all my life, but I have never heard of the ancient Wasteland Fighting League." Lin Sun was not surprised. He continued to ask, "Where is the Dark World? Like the Divine Sunshine Ancient Sect or the Hidden Land Realm?" Ma Taizhen's body stiffened. He shook his head again and said, "Almost every practitioner on the ancient way of starry sky knows about the Dark World, but few people can tell where it is." Lin Sun asked some more questions, but Ma Taizhen's knowledge was limited, so he couldn't answer them. Lin Sun suddenly realized that the Dew world might be a big world, but it was not the most prosperous and central place on the ancient way of starry sky. It seemed that he could only go to the central starfield to get the information he wanted. The central starfield, the Hong Meng world, the 6 Tao courts, the 10 war clans, even the Xuanji Taoist sect is located there. It seems that I have to go there in the future. While Lin Sun was thinking, the boundary ship suddenly shook violently as if it had encountered a strong resistance. Thanks to the tips and monthly tickets of Shuyu 55247246, Nothing to Do, Audi Never Perish, and so on. Chapter 1871. In the starry sky, in the void in front of the boundary ship, a huge black treasure ship appeared, like a ferocious black beast of the starry sky. A flag painted with a white bone bird was fluttering on the black treasure ship. The violent shaking of the boundary ship was caused by this black treasure ship. The bone bird pirate ship. Fu Tong, who was steering the boundary ship, exclaimed. His face changed dramatically. "Damn it, how could we encounter these starry sky bandits?" In the main hall, Ma Taizhen's expression also changed. The starry sky was vast, and danger was everywhere. Even if it was on a fixed route, it was still unavoidable for unpredictable natural and man-made disasters to occur. The existence of starry sky bandits was the most dreaded and hated existence of practitioners in all the big world. They were like locusts in the starry sky, robbing the wealth of the boundary ship. They came and went without a trace, and each of them was extremely insidious and ruthless. If they encountered ordinary bandits, they would recognize that this boundary ship belonged to Danding Taoism sect. They would not dare to act recklessly and could only avoid it. But the bone bandits were different. In the starry sky where the forces of Dew world were distributed, the bone bird bandits could be called one of the strongest bandit forces. Their leader, the bone bird Taoist, was a notorious evil practitioner with the terrifying combat power of the Saint King realm. Under his command were the 13 bandits, each of whom was a peerless saint. This bandit group didn't care what sect you were from. Anyone who was targeted would be regarded as prey and robbed. This was the reason why Ma Taizhen and Fu Tong changed their faces. Lin Sun asked a little and suddenly showed a strange expression. This boundary ship of Danding Taoism sect was now occupied by him, but they encountered a group of bandits. It could only be said that Ma Taizhen and his companions were really unlucky. Without any delay, he leaped into the air and gazed into the distance. Soon Lin Sun's pupils shrank. The huge black treasure ship was filled with a strong smell of blood and was damaged in many places. Corpses were strewn across the ground in pools of blood. Every single corpse had a bloody hole pierced through the center of their eyebrows. Their faces were filled with fear, as if they had encountered the most terrifying thing in the world before their deaths. Lin Sun's divine sense was so powerful that he instantly judged that these corpses were all great saints when they were alive. In particular, an old man in a Taoist robe emitted an aura that was different from that of a peak great saint. It was obvious that he was a saint king. However, there was no exception. A bloody hole was pierced through the center of the old man's brows as well. My God, Bone Bird Taoist and the 13 bandits under his command are all dead? Ma Taizhen, who appeared right behind Lin, cried out involuntarily, his face full of shock. In the thousands of years of the past, this group of roving bandits that roamed through the starry sky had plundered the goods of countless sects, killed countless people, and possessed a ferocious reputation. Because of their elusive movements and extremely cunning, they were practically impossible to eliminate, causing the countless cultivators of Diyu world to feel both detest and helpless towards them. But now they were completely annihilated. Who killed them? Lin Sun looked at a position where there was a white bone chair. On the chair there was a figure sitting with his back to the crowd. When Lin Sun looked at it, the white bone chair turned and revealed the front of the figure. Taoism Peer, do you mind if I take a ride on the border ship? This was a man in a pink robe, and his clothes were covered in pink rose cloud patterns. His jet black hair was held up diagonally by a hairpin, and it revealed a handsome face that could be described with the word beautiful. He had a pair of phoenix eyes with a natural charm. His skin was as white as mutton fat, and his figure was slender. Even his voice had a unique charm and magnetism. Anyone who saw such a beautiful and outstanding man was bound to be amazed. However, in a pink robe and a hairpin, he gave people a very good feeling, with a kind of broad-minded and romantic charm. Did you kill all these bandits? Lin Sun seemed to be lost in thought. The beautiful man in a pink robe nodded with a smile and said in a soft voice, "Such murderers should be killed by everyone." Ma Taizhen and Fu Tong gasped and were shocked. That was a saint king and 13 peak great sages, yet they were all killed by a man who was so beautiful that even women would feel ashamed of their inferiority? Who was he? Where did he come from? In the Diyu world, it seemed that no practitioner liked to wear such a robe decorated with pink rose cloud patterns. It was too unique. Lin Sun asked, "So, you also got all the wealth of these bandits?" The beautiful man in a pink robe was stunned and showed a strange expression. "Taoism Peer, do you want to get a share of the loot?" As he said, he stood up. Between his movements there was a kind of natural noble spirit that was different from the secular world. Lin Sun said, "I'm not interested in doing evil. You can take the border ship if you want. Bring me 3,000 Taoism gems." 3,000 Taoism gems. Ma Taizhen and Fu Tong were nervous. They were afraid that Lin Sun would offend the mysterious man in a pink robe. It should be known that this was a huge amount of wealth. It was far from enough to take the border ship. Unexpectedly, the man in a pink robe agreed readily. With a wave of his slender and white hand, a storage bag was thrown to Lin Sun. "I'm a person who values fate the most. It's fate that we can meet in this vast starry sky. I'll give you 6,000 Taoism gems," he said with a smile and took a light step. In an instant, he came to the border ship. His sleeves fluttered, his figure was slender, and he gave off bursts of cool fragrance. This man was really too beautiful. If he was seen by some male practitioners with special tastes, they would be drooling. Even Ma Taizhen and Fu Tong's hearts beat violently. This guy was too damn beautiful. All the most beautiful women in the world would be eclipsed by him. Lin Sun was a little surprised. He proposed the condition of 3,000 Taoism gems to let the man know the difficulty and retreat. Who would have thought that the man didn't care at all? "Taoism Peer, where do I live?" The man in a pink robe looked around. Anywhere. Lin Sun turned around and walked away. The man in a pink robe was more like a woman than a woman. Even if he was noble and unworldly, Lin Sun still felt sick of him. The man in a pink robe followed Lin Sun and said with a smile, "Taoism peer, my name is Jun Huan. What about you?" As for Ma Taizhen and Fu Tong, they were directly ignored by him. He didn't even look at them from beginning to end. Lin Daoyuan. Lin Sun pointed to the black pirate ship in the distance. "Don't you think this ship is in the way?" The man in a pink robe called Jun Huan said with a smile, "It's not difficult." He waved his sleeve. A pink flying sword with dreamy luster swept out and chopped at the ship. Silently, the huge black pirate ship was cut off from the middle and fell from the starry sky. Whoosh! The pink flying sword flew back and disappeared. Lin Sun's black eyes flashed. He glanced at Jun Huan and said, "I didn't know that you are also a sword practitioner. That sword is very powerful." Jun Huan showed an intoxicating smile and said, "The name of the sword is Instant of Beauty. It's my natal flying sword. I like it." Lin Sun looked at him in surprise and said carefully, "I have to remind you that this ship was robbed by me. There will be trouble in the future. Are you sure you want to stay here?" Jun Huan was stunned and couldn't help laughing. Interesting. There are not many people in the starry sky who dare to rob a ship, and there are even fewer people who are as frank as you. After a pause, he continued, "Then I might as well tell you that I am not afraid of trouble in addition to fate." Lin Sun frowned and knew that this guy was determined to stay. He said, "In that case, you'd better behave yourself." Then he turned around and left. Watching Lin Sun go away, Jun Huan opened a pink folding fan with pictures of beauties and chuckled, "It's really interesting." Its fate, from that day on, Jun Huan, an extremely beautiful man of mysterious origin, became a member of the ship. He liked to sit at the bow of the ship, holding a flagon and drinking by himself. His pink robe fluttered in the wind, which made him look indescribably romantic and unrestrained. Apart from that, he didn't do anything out of line and behaved himself. But neither Lin Sun, Ma Taizhen nor Fu Tong dared to ignore his existence. A man who could wipe out the roving bone-bird bandits alone was bound to be an extraordinary person. "Nan Qiu, when we arrive at the Diyu world, you will not be able to go to the Danding Taoism sect. At that time, I will find a suitable sect for you to cultivate in." On this day, Lin Sun found Nan Qiu and talked with her. Nan Qiu nodded. Unlike before, she was much more reserved in front of Lin Sun and no longer called him Little Brother Lin. This made Lin Sun sigh in his heart. He knew that he couldn't change anything. The only thing he could do was to arrange a good place for Nan Qiu before leaving the Diyu world. As time went by, the journey was peaceful. According to Lin Sun's estimation, they would arrive at the Diyu world in about 3 days. On this day, Ma Taizhen, Fu Tong, and Yu Yunhe found Lin Sun together. Their cultivation had been sealed, so although they had become prisoners, they were not grounded by Lin Sun. "Taoism peer, how do you want to deal with us? You should at least give us a clear explanation, right?" Ma Taizhen asked directly. Lin Sun didn't answer, but looked at Yu Yunhe and said, "You are from the Yu clan, an imperial family?" Yu Yunhe was stunned and said in a muffled voice, "Yes." Ever since he was captured by Lin Sun, this domineering and arrogant descendant of the Yu clan, an imperial family, had long lost his arrogance and was completely listless. These days, he was afraid that Lin Sun would come up with the idea of killing them. It was extremely torturous, and his spirit was very dispirited. "Then do you recognize this thing?" As he spoke, Lin Sun turned his palm, and a token appeared in his palm. The word Yu was inscribed in the ancient bird seal script. Yu Yunhe was stunned at first, and then revealed a look of disbelief. He cried out involuntarily, "This is worn by the ancestor green son of my clan. How could it be in your hands?"